The anime kicks off with a lone man facing down a silver dragon. With one swift strike, he defeats it and boldly declares his mission to become the strongest of all. The scene quickly shifts to the protagonist, who is mid-battle with a much smaller dragon. Just as the beast charges at him, someone steps in to save the day. A single clean blow ends the threat, and it's revealed that his savior is his partner, Anicap. She turns to him and scolds him for being so careless in combat. She always stays alert, and she expects the same from him. He agrees and thanks her for helping him out, but when he tries to throw in a compliment, she cuts him off with another sharp remark. Still, he manages to smile and gently pats her on the head, and despite her tough words, that small gesture makes her light up with joy. Later, he explains how dragons are ancient creatures descended from powerful magical bloodlines. They are humanity's natural predators and must be taken seriously. There are only two ways to kill them. One is by freezing their blood using silverina, an aura that flows through silver swords. The other is by burning them with sunlight, a method far harder to use in combat. As they walk through the bustling streets of town, it's clear that Anicap draws everyone's attention. People know who she is, a child prodigy, famous for slaying dragons even at her young age. He continues narrating how dragon hunters work, revealing that in the city of Ragna, Leo holds the record for the most dragons slain, despite only being 12. After collecting their reward, they stop by a restaurant to grab a bite. While she eats, he pulls out a camera and snaps a photo of her, quietly thanking her for being his hero. He says he's grateful to be part of her journey, even from the sidelines. At another table, a grumpy hunter overhears him and starts mocking him. He sneers at the idea of someone being content in another's shadow. Neither of them recognizes him, which clearly offends the man. He introduces himself as Sykes Charlike, apparently second in Ragna's hunter rankings. The moment he starts calling Ragna a burden to his partner, Anicap slams her sword into the table and dares him to repeat himself. She challenges his goals and beliefs, and when he fails to respond, she takes the spotlight. She declares her dream to become the strongest of all and vows to keep hunting dragons until she defeats the dragon god himself. She then turns to everyone in the bar and asks who among them has the courage to join her. Whoever steps forward will share every reward they earn. No one answers. Silence falls across the bar, until finally he steps forward. That single act makes her beam with pride as they walk out together, leaving the crowd stunned. The next morning he's back at it, training hard on his own. As sweat pours down his face, he reflects on how no matter how much effort he puts in, he may never catch up to her. Still, if he could die being useful to her, even if that means being eaten by a dragon, he wouldn't regret it for a second. Suddenly, he's interrupted by a ghostly figure who appears out of nowhere and tells him flat out that his fantasy won't come true. Instead, he's going to lose her. The next thing he knows, he's transported to a burning hellscape where he watches Leo die right in front of him. He jolts awake, drenched in sweat and tears, convincing himself it was just a dream until the same voice echoes again. That evening after dinner, he sits quietly watching Leo, the memory of that vision clinging to him like a curse. The next day, they head out to grab a mission but find nothing available, just like the rest of the hunters. With nothing to do, they decide to take a break. During that moment, he tells her it's time to trim her hair. As he carefully cuts it, flashes of that nightmare return, slicing through his thoughts. A new day passes, but he can't shake it. The vision pushes him into non-stop training like he's tweaking for a fight that hasn't even started yet. Meanwhile, over at the bar, Sykes and some hunters sit around, swapping rumors about weird dragon activity. Apparently, dragons are migrating east toward Donapieru, a city that hasn't seen an attack in forever. Leo overhears the chatter and tells him they should check it out. But when she turns to talk to him, she finds him zoned out. She snaps him back to reality, noticing his wrecked hands and that look in his eyes. She asks what's going on, saying she knows he's been pushing himself harder than usual. He breaks down a little and asks what he can possibly do for her. He just wants to be useful. She tells him what she thought when she first saw him, that she believes he has the potential to match her strength. He immediately denies it, saying he doesn't have her natural talent, and she agrees. But even then, she admits something deep inside her just knows he's going to be strong. She doesn't know how or when, but she promises to protect him until he gets there. He begins to narrate his past, starting with how dragons devoured his parents when he was only 3. He was taken in by relatives, but they were eaten too. Later, a noble burned him alive, and dragons torched that guy's estate as well. Because of all this, Sykes and his crew bullied him endlessly, blaming him for the chaos. Over time, he realized dragons always came for him, and he never understood why he was the only one left standing every time. He remembers the day Sykes beat him down and how Leo walked right up to him, sword in hand, and said they should hunt dragons together. She believed that being close to dragons wasn't a curse, it was a calling. At first he refused, terrified that sticking near him would eventually get her killed, but she didn't flinch. She said if that ever happened, it wouldn't be his fault. It would only mean she wasn't strong enough. After hearing her call herself strong, he he finally gave in and agreed. The next flashback shows him shaking like a leaf in front of his first dragon, but Leo charges in and slices it down without hesitation. Watching her fight, he convinces himself she's too strong to ever die before he does. From that day on, he vows to stay by her side until the day a dragon finally devours him. But just like that, the vision returns again that night, shaking him so badly that he ends up in tears. No matter what, it just won't let go. The next day, they go searching for work again and find out that Donna Piero has fallen. Leo is stunned. That city was considered untouchable, not even needing dragon hunters. She turns to Sykes and asks what he knows. He says the kingdom confirmed a horde of dragons attacked at sunset and that they've now issued an emergency extermination order. As Leo starts to strategize, she tells him Sykes isn't half bad for a number 2. But when she looks at him, she sees he's pale and panicked. All he can say is that they have to run, but before he can explain, she spots the city up in flames and bolts toward it. He tries to warn her about the vision, but she stops, looks him straight in the eyes, and promises she won't die. Meanwhile, dragons start tearing through the city guard like paper dolls. Out of the fire walks a man soaked in blood. The guards try to help him, but this dude turns out to be a straight menace. He kills them using his own blood as a weapon. With blood armor covering his body, the man looks around and tells the humans that their time is up. Ragna arrives and immediately recognizes the monster from his vision. His blood runs cold. This is the one who takes Leo away. He swears he's not letting that happen. Sykes sees the man too and freezes, realizing he's toast. He mutters something about a superior dragon and starts freaking out. Meanwhile, Ragna jumps in to attack, but his sword straight up shatters like cheap glass. The enemy just smirks and says, "Blood is fire," before blasting him with a massive inferno. Ragna's body is thrown back, and Anicap yells at Sykes to grab him while she holds the line. She rushes the superior dragon, ready to fight. Meanwhile, Ragna sinks into a nearby river, half-conscious, narrating that losing Leo is what ignites the start of his personal war, a quest for total dragon extinction. From here on out, it's full-on vengeance mode. He says he'll push his training beyond its limits, even if it kills him. He knows he'll need new allies too, even if losing them hurts all over again. At this point, he honestly doesn't care. He's done simping for peace. It's time to go full villain arc. He says his whole life has been loss after loss, and that's why he keeps pushing himself past the edge. But even that's not cutting it anymore. What he needs now is power that goes way beyond his limits. The scene shifts to him talking to the older version of himself, the same one from that nightmare. This guy says all he wants is a moment to finally die, but no matter what he does, that moment never comes. He always survives. As the old man speaks, he sees the tears in Ragna's eyes and tells him straight up, this is what his future looks like. It leaves him completely stunned. The older version doesn't hold back. He basically grills him for wasting time simping over a girl instead of getting stronger when it actually mattered. He says he did get stronger eventually, strong enough to protect everything he once loved, but by the time he reached that point, there was nothing left to save. Now he doesn't even know what his strength is for. The younger one stares at him, heartbroken, and begs for that strength. He says the time to be strong is now. The old man sighs and shoves him away, admitting that was the plan all along. We jump back to the present, where he's screaming in pain after Sykes pulls him out of the river. He says the old man handed over all that power in exchange for a steep price, and it's one he chose to pay. Meanwhile, Leo is locked in battle. She demands to know if the dragon she's fighting is the dragon god. He looks absolutely insulted by the question. With a nasty smirk, he says his name is Grimwelt, the 10th seed of the winged blood, and yeah, the weakest one out of the superior dragons. Then Grimwelt starts spilling secrets like it's open McNight. He explains the real reason the kingdom's about to crash and burn. Apparently, the dragon god used to love these sweets from a little shop in Donna Piero. But when some lowlifes robbed the place and bankrupted it, the god got salty and ordered the whole kingdom wiped out, just like that. Grimwelt says this is how things work in their world. When the dragon god catches feelings, entire nations get deleted. Oh, and by the way, he hasn't even been fighting seriously because, according to him, humans aren't even worth the effort. Right as he moves in for the kill, something slams into the battlefield. Out steps a whole new version of Ragna, now so juiced up that he can kill dragons with his bare hands. He tells us that after a decade of fighting, his sword straight up became part of his body. 5 years in, his body fused with the blade. 3 years later, he figured out how to boost his Silverina levels like crazy. By the 10-year mark, he had broken through every human limit. What happens next is pure disrespect. He moves so fast that Grimwelt starts freezing up just from being near him. The dragon thinks he's standing in front of Monarch, one of the top-tier beasts of their kind. He refuses to believe he's actually scared of a human and shifts into his full dragon form, blasting out his magic. Doesn't matter. With one strike, Ragna ices him completely and then shatters him like broken glass. After the fight, Leo walks over and he just breaks down. He throws himself into her arms, sobbing like a kid. She holds him and tells him she's glad he made it out alive. She can tell he's trained like crazy, but all he says is that he wasn't the one who trained like that. That version of himself is long gone. All that's left now is someone carrying his memories, and how much he missed her. In another scene, a goddess shows up and starts roasting the past Ragna for dying on his feet. She says this version won't last much longer either, and she's surprised he still has such soft eyes. Still, she admits that all her hopes for wiping out dragons now lie with his past self. Then we find out that Ragna wasn't the only place hit. 7 cities got attacked the same day. 6 of them were leveled, including the capital. But that day was also when the Reaper of Dragons came into the world. Next morning, he and Leo talk about the wreckage. He barely seems to care. All that matters to him is that she's alive. That's when Sykes barges in. Leo asks why he's even here, and he reminds her that this is actually his house. She's the one who asked to crash here after the inn burned down. Then he asks what they plan to do now. He casually says they should leave the country. Sykes stares at him like he's lost it, but then he explains that the dragon god wants the whole kingdom erased, and since they're near the border, they should bounce while they still can. Sykes squints at him and goes, "Wait, are you seriously Ragna? The dude I knew couldn't even throw a punch like that." But before he can get a response, the guy straight up falls asleep mid-convo. Leo shrugs and says the intense training probably fried his brain a little. Suddenly, while he's knocked out, a massive boom shakes the entire city. Leo and Sykes rush outside to find the forest itself attacking. And in the shadows, watching it all unfold, is the same woman the future Ragna spoke to, the one pulling the strings behind everything. The scene opens with a chef nervously apologizing to his master, Temruogtaf, for making him wait. Temruogtaf watches him coldly and demands the food be served right away. As soon as he tastes it though, his attitude shifts. The dish is good, no doubt, but he still tells the chef that it doesn't hold a candle to his own cooking. Without missing a beat, he eats the chef alive, then moves on to the assistants like it's a buffet. When he gets to one of the remaining assistants, he casually explains that his god has ordered the extermination of humans. So now he's free to feast on every last one of them. He calls it the greatest banquet he's had in centuries. Back in the city, Sykes slices through one of the attacking tentacles. He quickly realizes that a dragon must be behind this, which catches him off guard. Everyone knows that dragons don't attack in broad daylight. In another part of town, Leo is busy tearing down the forest of living trees when she sees that the tentacles have grabbed Ragna. She tries to reach him, but one lashes out at her. At that moment, Ragna snaps awake and freezes every tentacle around them with a single blast. Without even answering Leo, he bolts toward the main tree. He's pissed at himself for letting his guard down. Saving Leo made him relax for a second, and that second gave the enemy an opening. Now he's storming through the forest, thinking about how cursed his life feels. Every time, dragons take something from him, so he wonders, what does he need to do to finally stop it? The answer hits him hard. The only way is to kill every dragon in existence. Still, he hesitates. Even his future self couldn't get it done. So what chance does he have? His thoughts get cut off when a girl nearby, who had been held prisoner, steps into view. He instantly recognizes her. She doesn't recognize him though. He thanks her for saving him the trouble of finding her and says he needs her help to wipe out the dragons. When he calls her Crimson, she blinks and says her name is Eliza Yorkshire. Ragna tells her he already knows that and more than she realizes. Confused, she corrects him, saying her name is Elise, not Eliza. But Ragna presses forward, yelling that she is Crimson, the dragon monarch. She's one of the original winged monarchs who tried to kill the dragon god and betrayed her entire race. He explains that she's the one who bridged time, sending power from the future into the present, all so they could have another shot at ending the dragons for good. He doesn't know her reasons, but he saw how hard she tried. That's why he's here. He wants her to use him however she needs, because he shares the same dream of dragon extinction. Even if they failed before, he's convinced they can win this time. Elise suddenly punches him in the face. She scolds him for calling her a man and then a dragon, saying he's way out of line. Just then, Leo rushes in and says all the trees have been taken out. She asks if that means the fight's over, but Temruogtaf suddenly reappears, ready to get payback for the earlier hit to the face. Ragna doesn't waste time. He hurls Silverina bombs straight into the dragon, blowing him apart from the inside. Leo stares in shock and tells Ragna he's gotten insanely strong. She's proud, saying this is exactly what she always believed he could become. Ragna backs up and tells her he needs a favor. He wants her to lead the townspeople out of the country. Leo is confused and asks what he's planning. Ragna says there's something he has to take care of. He promises to meet up later, but Leo isn't having it. She says it's dangerous, but that's their job. They're dragon hunters. Why is he trying to leave her behind? Ragna tries to say they'll only be apart for a little while, but Leo interrupts him. She reminds him that he's supposed to follow her lead. Ragna freezes. He's never seen her this shaken. She apologizes immediately, saying that's not what she meant. He just stares at her, caught off guard. Leo has always been calm, strong, and certain about what's right. In this moment, even though she's still just a kid, Ragna sees it clearly. She's going to do something huge one day. Ragna's thoughts spiral as frustration builds. He blames himself, thinking Leo only had to grow so strong because he was too weak. While remembering the words of his future self, he turns to her and asks if she remembers what she said the day they met. With a small smile, he tells her those words saved him and that he's honestly glad they met. But right after that, he drops the bomb. He says they can't stay together anymore. She's too weak, and if they keep going like this, she'll die. Leo can't take it. Tears flood her eyes as she rushes at him with her sword, but he blocks her attack with just one finger and whispers goodbye. Later, Sykes is seen carrying Leo on his back. He says they're leaving the country like Ragna said, because staying means certain death. When she hears Ragna's name, Leo's heart sinks. Sykes, confused, asks what happened. She flashes back to a quiet moment when she asked Ragna about his dream. He had told her that just being by her side was enough. Thinking about that now, she feels awful for raising her sword against him. She knows deep down that Ragna has reached a level of power she always wanted, and even if she tried to take him down, she wouldn't stand a chance. So then why did he leave her? She breaks down completely, sobbing and begging him not to abandon her. Meanwhile, Ragna watches from a distance as Leo and the others cross the border. Elise shows up beside him and asks if he's really okay with leaving her like that. He says yes, tears in his eyes. He can only stay close to people whose deaths won't break him or people who can't die at all. Elise is caught off guard by how emotional he is, but Ragna calls her Crimson again. She snaps at him, insisting she doesn't know what he's talking about. If she really were a dragon, she says, the sunlight would have taken her out by now. He stays calm and explains that her dragon monarch powers are sealed. That's why she can survive the sun and why her powers feel weak right now. Elise gets irritated and tells him to go off and fight dragons by himself. And just to make sure he gets the point, she reminds him again, she's a woman. Ragna, not even flinching, says she can change her gender and age whenever she wants. Elise, clearly done with the conversation, storms off. Watching her go, he remembers how she once told him earning her trust would be a nightmare. So he runs after her, blurting out random skills he's picked up. He knows how to read, write, cook, and even clean. All of it just so he could be useful to Leo. Elise watches him rattle off this list like he's trying to impress her, totally confused about where this is going. Ragna keeps talking, saying he'll do all the chores if she just teams up with him to destroy the dragons. Elise gets flustered and tells him to quit simping and pestering random girls. Ragna swears that's not it, because he's a man. Elise tells him she can't live up to whatever image he's got in his head. Then suddenly, he faints from a fever. Seeing him passed out, she finally steps in and uses her powers to help. In a flashback from the future, Ragna first meets Crimson. The moment he sees her, he charges with zero hesitation. She survives and tries to talk, but he's not listening. When she says she wants to team up to destroy dragons, he decapitates her, but she pops right back, offering to help him channel his strength more effectively. Back in the present, Ragna wakes up to find Crimson still with him, though she's still denying who she is. She asks if that thing Temrogtaf said about the kingdom being destroyed is actually true. Ragna confirms it and says they need to get moving. They have to find the winged monarch, the one calling the shots. That dragon was defeated in the future, but it took 20 years. This time, they've met earlier. He thinks they can pull it off faster. Crimson turns away, still playing hard to get, but deep down, she's starting to wonder how he knows so much. She reveals to us that while he was knocked out, she checked his body and discovered two wild things. First, his body is fused with a silver sword. He can now produce and release Silverina on command. That alone is enough to get her attention. She's curious if he's stumbled on a new way to kill dragons. Before she can think more, a group of dragons appears overhead, heading straight for the townspeople. Ragna scoots her up and rushes to stop the attack. He gets in position, ready to go full power. He activates something called Silverina Battle Arts and summons multiple silver swords, launching them all at once. One of the swords lands in Crimson's hand. She studies it and starts imagining what a full-blown army armed with these could do. Seeing the potential, she finally joins the fight, using her slime servant, the one living inside her stomach, to take out the last of the dragons. Then she turns to Ragna and finally drops the act. She admits it, she's Crimson. Ragna lights up. He knew it all along. Crimson tells him she's down to team up, but only if he agrees to one condition. She hands him a vial of poison and explains that if he betrays her, it'll kill him on the spot. If he really wants to be used by her, he has to prove it. Before she even finishes talking, Ragna gulps it down like it's nothing. Now convinced of his loyalty, Crimson agrees to lead him down a new path, one that ends with the extinction of every last dragon, including their so-called god. The scene kicks off with pure nightmare fuel. A dragon man is shown torturing women, clearly enjoying every scream. He says he's doing it for science. He wants to know how much of the human body can be sliced off while still keeping them alive. On top of that, he claims the experience brings him closer to the wind, like he's building some twisted emotional bond with the elements. Then it cuts to a group of civilians under attack. Dragons are all over them, and the people try their best to fight back, but it's not looking good. Just when things get ugly, Ragna pulls up. No hesitation. He charges in and wipes out the dragons like they're nothing, saving the group before anyone else can get hurt. The story flashes back to when Slime first introduced himself to Ragna. Slime immediately scolds him for acting too cocky in front of his master. He reminds him that he's just a regular human and has no right to speak so casually. Ragna doesn't react much, so Slime steps it up and declares himself as the #1 servant of the Dragon Monarch Crimson. Because of that title, he demands Ragna call him Lord Slime from now on. Instead of arguing, Ragna just agrees to it, but Slime isn't satisfied. He complains that Ragna said it too quietly, like he wanted an encore. Right then, Crimson steps in and tells him to zip it. She says she wants to hear about the future and asks Ragna how many dragon monarchs got taken out. From there, she starts grilling him with question after question. When Ragna stumbles and can't answer, she starts throwing shade, saying her trust in him is running low. Ragna looks embarrassed but keeps it real. He explains that his memories of the future are spotty. He can't recall details whenever he wants. In fact, he didn't even recognize her at first. He only realized who she was after seeing her face. Crimson thinks it over and calls his memory issue both convenient and dangerous. If he needs a specific trigger to remember something, then that puts them at risk. She admits that she doesn't trust anyone but herself, and now that includes Ragna. He tries to apologize and tells her he wants her to trust him more, but it sounds like he's fighting an uphill battle. She stares at him and asks one more thing. What exactly can he tell her about his powers? How do they actually work? Ragna gives her a straight answer. She doesn't need to stress about his mind. His power is locked into his body, not his memories, so he'll still be able to fight no matter what. Back in the present, Crimson eyes him with curiosity. She tells him that his fighting style is starting to really catch her interest. Crimson watches him closely, saying she's curious to see how he slays dragons with that Silverina technique. But just as Ragna says he'll wipe out as many as possible, she shuts that down real quick. He won't be the one using it this time. Instead, she wants the people they just rescued to learn it. She turns to the civilians and casually drops the news that the nearby dragons have already been handled. Then she dramatically introduces Ragna as Ragna the Reaper, master of dragon hunting mayhem. Ragna tries to stop her from hyping him up, but Crimson keeps going, pretending to be just a humble magician tagging along. She explains that while magic is real, only superior dragons can normally use it, since their blood is packed with magical energy. Human magicians are rare, almost mythical. That's why she sees these civilians as the perfect audience for a little deception. The group starts asking questions about Slime, curious how he can switch from goo to human. Crimson claims it's all thanks to her magical skills, revealing Slime as her custom-made pet. The civilians totally buy it, and now they're starstruck by the idea of magic. Crimson, of course, is loving every second of it. Soon, a nervous dragon hunter named Michael walks up to Ragna and Crimson. He asks for help dealing with a terrifying dragon that only someone like them could possibly face. He explains that his team barely escaped from a monstrous tornado ripping through the city of Torier, and he's pretty sure a dragon is behind it. He even spotted something horrifying hidden inside the storm. Crimson immediately guesses it's Desistrois, the third seat and storm cell, a superior dragon wrapped entirely in wind. Michael is stunned that she knows the name, but she plays it off with her magician act. Ragna, hearing this, gets ready to bolt off and face the thing alone, but Crimson casually taps his back, and he instantly crashes to the ground. Everyone panics as Crimson calmly explains the situation. She knows Ragna forced his body past its natural limits, shutting off every safety mechanism just to fight. Now every muscle fiber in him is wrecked, and he's down for the count for at least 3 days. She says it's best he rests, or it could ruin his future as a hunter. When the crowd asks how they can help, she turns them down flat. Still, the civilians beg her to handle Desistrois instead. They even start offering money, but she refuses again. Then she changes tone and questions why they're even still worried if they're not in danger right now. Turning to Michael, she calls him out as a foreigner and accuses him of trying to pay her to do his job. She says she understands he's racked with guilt. After all, they must have heard people screaming as the storm tore them apart. She stares him down and asks if blood was raining from the sky while they ran. Michael starts shaking. The guilt's too much. He falls to his knees and confesses he froze, and they all ran because they knew they had no chance. Crimson stares at them and asks if they've ever truly been proud to call themselves hunters. Michael whispers that he used to be, but now he just feels like prey. Still, if he had power like Ragna's, he swears he would have fought. Crimson then holds up Ragna's sword and tells them this is their shot, the Reaper's gift. With it, they might kill dragons. She doesn't promise they'll survive, but asks if they're ready to take that risk. Michael and the others nod, ready to try. The next day, she leads them to a depot full of magical weapons. Everyone's stunned by how advanced the gear is. She explains that Ragna made the special ammo himself, even though he still can't stand. The new hunters train with the gear, clearly impressed. Ragna, meanwhile, tells Crimson she's got that scheming look in her eye. She smirks and asks if he's mad about it, but he says he doesn't mind her using them as pawns, because he plans to make sure they survive anyway. That catches her off guard. She reminds him that she never said any of them would live. Then she asks what's actually bugging him. Ragna admits it. First, it sucks being this wrecked. He can't even sit up properly. Second, he hates how she keeps calling him Reaper and parading him around like some kind of circus act. He doesn't want people getting too close, because if they do, they might die. Crimson pushes back, saying he left Leo behind. Wasn't that to keep her safe? Ragna cuts in, saying he didn't abandon her, but Crimson doesn't buy it. She says from Leo's perspective, it absolutely looked like betrayal, and deep down, Ragna knows she's right. He says it's none of her business, but she fires back that it is now, because Leo is his reason for fighting, and since they're partners, that means she matters to Crimson too. He sighs and admits it. Keeping Leo away doesn't mean she's actually safe. Just the thought of losing her again is unbearable. Crimson thanks him for being honest and says she finally understands how much Leo means to him. Then she offers a totally deranged solution. They could just stash Leo in a pocket dimension, drug her into a coma, and keep her frozen until the war is over. Ragna immediately tries to punch her, but he's too weak to land it. She laughs, then thumps him in the gut and asks what's so wrong with her idea. He says it's the dumbest thing he's ever heard. Crimson agrees, but says it's kind of his charm. He's so stupidly human, and that's exactly why she knows she can drag him through hell. Then she adds one last jab. She hates how he walks around acting like he knows everything about her life since the moment they met. Crimson looks him in the eyes and says he needs to learn his place, because the truth is, he knows nothing about her life. After smacking him again, she tells him that she'll handle Desestrois herself, since she doesn't plan on letting her pawns go to waste. Then she adds that if he really thinks he's cursed, she's about to show him what a true curse actually looks like. She picks up a gun, raises it to her temple, and fires a shot straight into her head. The impact is brutal, yet she stays on her feet, completely unfazed, proving she can't die. Right then, Slime returns and informs her that he did exactly what she asked. He planned to deny inside the city to spy on everything happening there. Crimson seems impressed by how well everything has gone and tells him to show her what the city looks like now. Slime pulls up the visual and starts explaining the scene. There's rubble everywhere, and right at the center, a giant vortex is swirling above the ruins. That's where the dragon is hiding. But he also saw something more disturbing. Dozens of humans are floating near the tornado, and their bodies are covered in blood. Some are missing limbs. The second he mentions that the victims are women, Crimson says she needs them to stay alive for as long as possible. The pain they're in will keep the dragon distracted, which works perfectly for her. Still, she can't allow anyone else to find out, so she decides to lie and tell the others that nobody survived the attack. As dawn creeps in, Crimson gathers her pawns and lays out the game plan. Once they're ready, the whole squad moves toward the city to hunt down Desestrois. The dragon sees them coming and is actually surprised they showed up. Since the sun is almost up, he figures they'll turn around and try again another day. But Crimson steps forward, grabs a megaphone, and announces with a smirk that today is the perfect morning to hunt a vile dragon. Michael admits something feels off. For the past 2 days, while they've been prepping for the big fight, he hasn't felt even a flicker of doubt. It's like he forgot what fear even was. But now, standing in front of Desestrois' massive tornado, that old fear comes rushing back. The storm is way too big, way too powerful, and suddenly he starts questioning what made him think a group of second-rate dragon hunters could actually pull this off. Still, he shakes off the nerves, raises his voice, and tells his teammates not to lose heart because they're here to win. They're here to bring down a dragon. Desestrois watches all this and just loses it. He screams that he's going to kill every last one of them, and apparently, the wind agrees. At the same time, Crimson explains that this tornado, the one Desestrois calls his cell, spins twice as fast as her car. Basically, anyone trying to outrun it would get shredded in seconds. That's why she came up with a different plan. Instead of trying to escape, they'll drive straight toward the sun. It won't kill him, but it might just take the edge off his power. She breaks it down for the team. This dragon's got insane defense and regeneration, so sunlight won't do serious damage, but it can still chip away at his strength enough to tilt the odds in their favor. With the plan in motion, Michael moves in and opens fire using the cannon built into the vehicle. The bullets fly toward the tornado, but instead of slicing through, they freeze midair, just like the wind around them. Crimson watches and casually explains the science behind it. Most dragon hunters think Silverina freezes blood. They got it twisted. What it actually does is freeze the magic inside the blood. She figures Desistrois is probably assuming they're using silver bullets right now. He's half right. What he doesn't know is that the bullets are plain old lead, but completely soaked in Silverina thanks to Ragna. Desistrois sees the freezing wind and scoffs, calling their attack weak and pointless. He says nothing could ever break the bond between him and the wind, but Crimson just smirks. He has no clue what he's dealing with. These aren't regular bullets, and this isn't some cheap trick. Ragna's Silverina-infused lead is built different. The proof hits hard. Those bullets, soaked in Silverina, start messing with the very core of his tornado. The outer winds begin to tremble, and something inside the storm starts to break. Even though it isn't enough to finish the job, Crimson looks satisfied. Ragna's Silverina has taken these bullets to a whole new level, and she can clearly see the difference. Desistrois, on the other hand, is starting to tweak. He has no idea what kind of ammo they're using, but whatever it is, it's breaking his connection with the wind. Desperate to fix it, he boosts the tornado's speed, forcing Crimson to bark out a command. Michael has to keep firing non-stop. The lead keeps flying, cutting deeper into the storm, and Desistrois completely loses it. He starts ranting, saying humans are weak, pathetic, and too dumb to pose any real threat. Even as he shouts, he refuses to let them escape alive. But in all his rage, he doesn't realize he's drifted too close to something he can't break through because someone is guarding it. He crashes into the structure and freezes, literally. The sun hits in full force, and right then, Slime takes the shot. He locks the dragon in place and drives his Silverina spear straight through his chest. Desistrois screams, not even sure what just happened. The pain hits hard, and then it hits him. His heart's been pierced. And without that, it's game over. As his body starts to shut down, a deep cold creeps in. The wind slips out of his control, and for the first time, he looks genuinely scared. Slime, hyped by the scene, cheers on the humans, yelling at them to finish this man off while they still can. Suddenly, something hits the battlefield, and the team is under attack. Desistrois tries to use the chaos to yank the spear out, but Crimson barrels in with her car and smashes into him head-on, completely wrecking what little strength he has left. That's when Michael steps up and lands the finishing blow, bringing the Storm Dragon down for good. After the fight, Crimson turns to Ragna and says Desistrois wasn't just some low-tier jobber. If he had shifted into his full dragon form, he could have dropped 8 tornadoes on them without breaking a sweat. And if that had happened, their whole plan would have gone up in smoke. In the final shot, the humans tear apart what's left of the dragon's body. Crimson watches it all, proud that Desistrois never even imagined he'd be the one hunted down and wiped off the map. Crimson explains that she pushed Desistrois on purpose. Her goal was to tick him off just enough to make him fight with everything he had. Still, even after all that, she's shocked he never went full power. To her, it's clear his pride got the better of him. Now she turns to her partner and tells him she's found what could be a third weakness for dragons, something beyond just sunlight and Silverina. And she's already thinking about how far they can stretch that edge, maybe by pumping Silverina into stronger weapons or even planting it right into the battlefield. Then she says he should be thankful to Desistrois, because thanks to him, she just unlocked a whole new level of potential. The scene shifts. It's night now, and the two of them are talking under the moonlight. Crimson says that leaving Leo behind was tough, but teaming up with her was the right call, and now she's dead set on earning his full recognition. He's not so sure she even saw the last battle as a real fight. To her, it felt more like an experiment, just another way to test how far she could push Silverina. That's when it really hits him. This is who she is. Crimson doesn't need anyone to spell out what's coming. She already understands dragons inside and out, how they move, how they think, how they die. She doesn't even need the future. She reads it herself. Later, she stands over Desistrois' burning head, watching the flames dance with a satisfied grin. It's something she's dreamed of for a long time, and watching her like that, he remembers just how insane she really is. She's dangerous and she's brilliant, and when every last dragon is dead, he plans to go after her too. In the next scene, Crimson's squad is floored by how much they're being given. Food, weapons, transport, the full package. Crimson tells them not to thank her since she's only doing it to get them out of the country safely. Slime waves them off with a cheerful goodbye and a wish for good health. After that, Crimson wipes every one of their memories. They won't remember her, but they do remember him. So as they leave, they thank him for helping them stay alive and settle the score. He tells them it wasn't just him. Everyone stepped up to take the dragon down. Hearing that, Michael and the rest can't help but smile. For once, they actually feel like real dragon hunters. Crimson then pulls out a radio, the kind she uses to stay up to date on news. She tunes in, and a voice from the Royal Army of Les comes through with an emergency broadcast. The army reports a major dragon attack happening near the border. All citizens are told to obey the military and evacuate to the capital immediately. Trains are already running, and they promise the capital is safe. But for anyone stuck behind, the message is clear: stay home and wait for rescue, and absolutely do not go near the border. He hears it and instantly gets suspicious. Crimson agrees. She thinks the real plan is to cut off the exits and herd everyone straight into the capital. That's all he needs to hear. He asks her to head there with him. The story jumps back 5 days. A soldier stands in front of the king with grim news: Donna Pieru has fallen. The king assumes it's a border conflict, maybe an attack from Garnus or Marked, but the soldier says no, it was dragons. That shocks the king. The soldier explains that a lightning storm tore through the city at sunset, wiping out everything. The garrison was destroyed, and then a swarm of medium-tier dragons showed up. Since then, all contact with Donna Pieru has gone dark. The king wastes no time. He orders the troops from Ronneber and Tortier to mobilize and wants dragon hunters added to the force. But he also makes one thing clear: if any of them come across a superior dragon, they are not to engage under any circumstance. After the soldier leaves, the king's right hand remembers something strange. 20 years ago, during a battle with Garnus, dragons suddenly showed up and crushed the invading army, saving their side. Back then, the king thought the dragons in that region just didn't want to get involved. But now he's wondering what changed and what set them off. Even so, he feels a bit of comfort knowing the capital is protected by a barrier. Then again, he knows a single superior dragon could wipe out thousands. As that thought lingers, a strange calm washes over him. That's when she appears. A divine-looking figure steps into view and introduces herself as Ultimacia, first seat monarch of the Winged Blood. King Femit Lys freezes. He knows that name. He stumbles over his words and asks about the capital's barrier. Ultimacia nods and confirms it's the Solar Safeguard, a sunlight-based defense system created by the Solarians. She says the barrier absorbs sunlight during the day and releases it at night to drive dragons back. And yes, it's still active. She can feel the heat even now. The king is stunned. As far as he knows, during all the years of war between humans and dragons, Ultimacia never once stepped onto the battlefield. She calmly tells him not to worry. His people are still alive. She simply paused time. Then she apologizes, saying things would have gotten messy if a dragon monarch had been spotted walking around the capital. Even if her entrance feels a little over the top, Ultimacia admits she genuinely wanted to meet the king. With a sharp look, King Femid stares her down and demands to know why she's come. She tells him she's here to apologize. Then she calmly presents the severed head of Grimwelt, the same dragon who attacked Donna Pieru at full speed. She explains that she executed him herself as punishment, and she felt it was her duty to bring the remains straight to the throne. She apologizes again, saying it was her failure to keep her subordinate under control. Hearing her gentle tone, watching her polished manners, and listening to her sound genuinely remorseful, King Femid struggles to make sense of it all. He questions whether this graceful, articulate being is really a dragon, and if time is frozen, how is she even moving? He also wonders if the barrier around the city might give him a shot to attack her, but he shuts the thought down immediately, knowing that doing so would bring on a full-blown war with the Winged Blood. Since Ultimacia brought the head herself and offered a formal apology, the king feels he has no choice but to accept. When he does, she bows and thanks him sincerely. Still, she adds that what happened is unfortunate, not because of the destruction, but because she never wanted the people of Les to be afraid of dying. She wanted them to vanish quietly, without panic. The king stares at her, completely thrown off by the way she talks. He rises from his throne, trying to piece it all together. He asks how that even makes sense. If she didn't want fear or death, why did she allow the attack? Ultimacia responds without emotion. She confirms that she never planned the attack herself, but now the country has to be destroyed. It's the will of God, she says. She explains that she had been preparing quietly for the nation's end, but now that Donna Pieru is already gone and refugees are fleeing across the borders, everything is unraveling too quickly. Because of that, she admits she gave the order to wipe out the border cities. No one can be allowed to escape. No soul is permitted to slip away. Horrified, the king pleads with her to stop. He asks if she seriously wants to trigger a war. Ultimacia looks him in the eyes and replies that it won't be a war, it'll be a massacre. The king tries again, asking if there's any possible way to negotiate. When she calmly turns him down, he realizes what he has to do. Without hesitation, he activates his ring and begins funneling the barrier's energy into a focused weapon. He aims it directly at her. Ultimacia seems surprised by his boldness and the way the barrier transforms, but before he can fire, his own right-hand man, still under her control, snaps out of his trance just long enough to shoot him. Suddenly, a dragon appears and stands between Ultimacia and the king. He declares that no one is allowed to harm his monarch. She thanks the dragon, Nebulem, for stepping in to protect her. That praise immediately stings the other dragon, Elder Borgias, who gets jealous that she didn't acknowledge him first. She turns toward him and reminds him that she never asked anyone to kill the king. As the king lies there bleeding, Borgias shrugs and admits the man is still barely alive. Disgusted by their cruelty, Ultimacia decides to fix things. She waves her hand and rewinds time, restoring the king's body back to the way it was. Then she politely apologizes for how her followers acted. Confused and stunned, the king tries to sit up. He asks how he's even alive again after taking a fatal shot. Ultimacia tells him she simply reversed time to just before his body was destroyed. That's when the weight of it all hits him. He stares at her and asks if she's a god. She shakes her head. No, she says she's only a servant of God. And when he asks if God truly wants the country to fall, she tells him yes. The fear of death is going to swallow the nation, and no one will escape it. That's divine will. Still, if she offers him one option, cooperation, she promises that if he helps her, she can make sure most of the people will die painlessly, without panic. Faced with no way out and a truth too heavy to fight, King Themed silently agrees. He decides to cooperate and lead his people into the fate already chosen for them. On March 8th, year 498 of the Solar Era, a new scene kicks off with an urgent broadcast from the Royal Army of Lees. The voice over the speaker warns that dragons have been spotted all around the outer zones. Everyone is told to evacuate toward the capital immediately, and the streets quickly overflow with panicked crowds trying to flee. At the palace, one of the king's attendants gives King Themed a tense update. He says the number of refugees keeps skyrocketing and warns that letting more people in might not be wise. But the king, looking hollowed out, waves him off. He insists it's fine and says they'll welcome everyone, no matter what. According to him, there's no point thinking about the future anymore, not when it's already gone up in smoke. Elsewhere, the scene cuts to the severed head of a dragon quietly judging Themed, thinking he's lost all backbone. Then Ultimacia shows up beside him, clearly unimpressed. She says she's honestly surprised he hasn't turned to ash yet. With a calm tone, she tells him the plan is officially underway. In 10 days, they'll give everyone in the capital a peaceful death. The moment the dragon opens his mouth to reply, she shoves her fingers right into his eyes to shut him up. No warning, no hesitation. Once she has his full attention, Ultimacia casually drops a bomb. Ninth Seat Dornier has been taken out, and the one who did it, none other than Princess Starlia lays. The dragon reacts with mild surprise, asking if that's the infamous Silver Princess who leads the Argentum Corps. Ultimacia confirms it without much emotion. She says that because of it, she had to send in backup. 5th Seat Terra Tectra and 6th Seat Ulto Zora have already been dispatched to deal with her. The dragon then questions why she's even telling him all this if he's not the one assigned to kill her. That's when Ultimacia hits him with the real update. 3rd Seat Desis Troa, 8th Seat Temrogtaf, and 10th Seat Grimwelt have all been wiped out. That finally gets a reaction. The dragon wonders aloud if maybe someone from the Solarist Church or some ancient bloodline is behind this. Ultimacia cuts that theory off fast. She tells him not to be so naive and reminds him that their master warned them this might come from a completely unknown force, something they haven't even accounted for. That strange thrill in the air seems to light a spark in the dragon's chest, and he grins like he's loving every second of it. To him, the situation feels electrifying. But Ultimacia doesn't share the vibe. She blasts fire at him without warning, scolding him hard for letting things spiral out of control. She blames the entire mess on his reckless behavior. Caught off guard, he instantly drops the cocky act and bows his head, apologizing over and over. He begs her to return his heart and promises to behave next time. After a short pause, Ultimacia agrees. His punishment is lifted for now. She turns her attention to another dragon nearby and issues a clear order. The 2nd Seat, Lightning Claw Dragon Wolfcummy, is to deal with the assassin. As he strolls toward her, he casually teases her with a grin, asking if he'll get a kiss as a reward if he pulls the mission off right. Instead of answering, Ultimacia launches a full-force punch to his gut, sending him flying back. She scolds him again, fed up with his nonsense and frustrated that he never seems to learn. Wolfcummy, laughing as he hits the ground, says that getting her riled up is the only thing that keeps life interesting. She tells him to cut it out and move quickly, and he flashes a thumbs up, saying not to worry. After all, speed is his specialty. The scene jumps to Ragna, who lies broken and barely breathing, surrounded by a sea of dragons. Shame and fury swirl inside him. Once again, he's survived but done nothing. That realization eats him alive. He clenches his teeth and starts yelling, overwhelmed by frustration. But Elder Borgias slams a fist into his stomach to shut him up, warning him not to make a scene in front of the monarch. Ragna lifts his head and glares at him, trembling with rage and helplessness. Borgias turns to the group and calmly asks what they should do with the human. One by one, the dragons speak their minds, debating Ragna's fate like he's already dead. Lying on the ground, unable to fight back, Ragna silently curses how useless he is. He thinks of Leo again and tells himself that she should have been the one to survive, not him. Not like this. He wonders why he's still alive, why he's still so weak, and why he keeps failing every time it matters. For a brief second, he convinces himself it's over. Maybe this time, there won't be anyone to bail him out. Maybe he can just let go. But then, Woltikomi walks up and crouches beside him. With a twisted smirk, he asks if Ragna feels relieved right now. He grabs him by the neck and lifts him off the ground, asking if he really wants to die. His tone shifts, and he starts mocking him, calling him pathetic. Still, he says he won't kill him. That would be too easy. Instead, he wants Ragna to live in misery, buried under the weight of his own hatred and weakness. That decision doesn't sit right with everyone. Disastroa speaks up, saying he refuses to accept such a selfish call. Woltikomi turns on him and tells him to shut his mouth. Then, addressing the entire group, he sarcastically asks, since when they became the type to do someone a favor by ending their suffering. Standing firm, he declares he's sparing Ragna and wants to know if anyone has a problem with that. He doesn't get to finish the moment. In a blink, Ultimacia appears behind him and slices off his head in a single motion. His body drops, and she coldly says that yes, there's a problem. She scolds him, yet again, for stirring up chaos. She reminds him that she despises anyone who breaks the peace and asks if he'd like to be burned alive again. Woltikomi, now reeling and terrified, begs her to let it slide. She tells him to shut up and stay that way. Once things settle, Ultimacia faces the rest of the group and calmly says she's heard all their opinions, but now it's time to hear hers. She reveals her plan. She wants to bring this human into their bloodline. The announcement drops like a bomb. The dragons are stunned. Woltikomi, who's barely recovered from his last mistake, immediately blurts out the question everyone's thinking. Why would they even need someone new? Before the man can even finish his sentence, she casually drives her sword straight through his skull. Then she calmly steps toward Ragna with a gentle smile and says how happy she is to finally meet him. She formally introduces herself and starts examining the weapons he's carrying, pointing out that they're dragon hunter tools from a long-lost country. She remembers that the people of that land used to be full of life and pride, thriving under the guidance of a shining leader. But right after that, she confesses she's the one who wiped out that entire nation without hesitation, leaving nothing behind. So now, seeing someone like him still alive stuns her. With a warm smile, she says it must be God's will that kept him breathing, and because of that, she forgives his existence. Tears well up in her eyes as she expresses how truly glad she is that he's still alive. Ragna, totally confused, asks what she's talking about, so Ultavzora steps in and suggests maybe the guy just doesn't understand her language. He explains that what she means is, they want to turn Ragna into a dragon and make him one of their own. Grimwelt chimes in next, saying people have always assumed they were just some medieval dragons who learned how to take human form. But that's not it. He says the low-tier or mid-tier dragons are just beasts born from the bloodline, while the ones they call the matured are actually ancient humans who were transformed by receiving the progenitor's blood. Ragna's face drops as the truth sinks in. Grimwelt tells him to be grateful because they're offering him the chance to rise above humanity and become something greater. But Ragna isn't having any of it. He tells them to stop messing with him and reminds them that they're the ones who killed Leo, and not just her, but so many others who might have been someone's family, someone's love. The ones who saved him, the ones who fought with him, he swore to protect them all. So no matter how noble they make it sound, all he wants is to wipe them out. Altazora tries to talk him down, saying that once he becomes part of the bloodline, even that hatred will fade away because he felt the same way once. Ultimacia adds that if Woltikomi were here, he'd probably push for something reckless right about now, but she says she doesn't want that. Instead, she wants to free Ragna from the hell Woltikomi wanted to trap him in. She lifts her sword, forged from her own blood, and drives it into Ragna's chest. As he screams in agony, she tells him this transformation will change everything about how he sees the world. She urges him to let go of all that rage and walk with her, fulfilling God's will by her side. Suddenly, he jolts awake in a panic, gasping for air. He's on a train and Crimson is sitting right beside him, laughing at his terrified face. She jokes that his dream must have been one wild ride and says that's why she didn't bother waking him. Then she casually asks if he remembered anything useful, but he doesn't respond. Instead, he stares out the window and thinks to himself, sure, Crimson's a nightmare in her own right, but Ultimacia, she's on a whole different level. He recalls that fake kindness on her face, the way she smiled even after taking so many lives. Her brand of mercy disgusts him more than anything else. He clenches his jaw and silently swears he'll take her down no matter what. Crimson glances at him, wondering how much of his real strength he can use at this point. Remembering what she saw during the last fight, she realizes she still doesn't fully understand the depths of his power, and if they're going to go up against someone like Ultimacia, they'll need years of prep to even stand a chance. Still, she figures Ultimacia already knows what happened at the border and might send Woltakami after them. Because of that, now feels like the right moment to strike. In her mind, this next mission isn't just about the fight, it's a test. If they succeed, they'll walk away with something huge. But if things go sideways, she's already made up her mind. No matter what happens, she'll make sure her most valuable asset survives. She then points toward the window and says the royal capital is just ahead, catching both Ragna and Slime off guard. Somewhere else, Ultimacia looks up and quietly asks God if this is really what he wants. She wonders if Lise truly needs to be erased. God answers without hesitation, asking what Lace even is. In his mind, that place already doesn't exist, and if something no longer exists in God's thoughts, it shouldn't exist in the real world either. But anything still living in his mind, that must be brought into reality. That's her purpose, to carry out his will. That's why the bloodline exists. As she calls out to her companions, Ultimacia admits there's a strange sadness growing inside her. Since those who failed to become God's extension were clearly unworthy of the bloodline, she declares that wiping out this entire country will serve as a tribute to them. The scene jumps to the outer edge of the royal capital, where Slime lights up like a kid in a candy store. He gets all hyped up by how massive the place looks, practically bouncing with excitement. Crimson, not in the mood, quickly tells him to shut it. She explains that they're currently in the new commercial district, a noisy, busy part of town that's always been this way. But she says they're not here to shop or sightsee. Their real destination is the second wall, up where the old district lies, and starting now, she tells them to refer to her only as Veronica. She turns to Ragna to check if he got the message, but freezes when she sees him hunched over, throwing up on the street. He grits out that he's sick, there are just way too many people around. Crimson and Slime both think he's playing around, but he looks dead serious. Crowds seriously mess with him. Crimson, visibly irritated, smacks him in the head and snaps that she won't tolerate that kind of weakness in his current system. She asks how he handled Ranabera, since that place was also packed. Ragna shrugs and says maybe it didn't bother him because Leo was with him back then. Crimson and Slime both groan out loud at the answer, calling it gross without holding back. Crimson then glares at him and asks, if a crowd is enough to make him puke, is he ready to call it quits on the hunt? He shoots back instantly that it doesn't matter if he's throwing up or missing a leg. If the target's right in front of him, he's going after it. Hearing that, Crimson gives a half smile and helps him up. She tells him to lean on her if he needs to and says from now on, she'll fill in for Leo. He shuts that down hard, saying no way can someone like her ever replace Leo. Crimson, acting fake offended, says she'll kill him for that, and right then, he hurls again. Later, they finally reach the old district. Crimson tells Ragna that this is where things get serious. She's about to put her plan into motion and warns both him and Slime to lay low while she's gone for the next 2 hours. She tells Slime to keep an eye on Ragna and not let him do anything dumb. Before walking off, she gives them strict orders: no names, no speaking, no risky moves. If someone talks to Ragna, he's to walk away and circle back to the same spot 5 minutes later. If he messes that up, she'll take it as betrayal. As Crimson slips into the crowds, she starts analyzing the scene around her. Sure, there are people everywhere, but it's not packed like it should be. With over 2 million refugees expected in the capital, the streets should be bursting at the seams. Instead, she sees gaps, too much space, too many empty pockets in the crowd. It doesn't add up. She thinks back on the numbers and quickly lands on one chilling possibility. The population's shrinking. The elimination has already begun. Just like food disappearing inside a stomach, people are vanishing, and no one even realizes it. As the sun begins to set, Nebulum calmly finishes her rounds and reports to Borgias that today's elimination is complete. Now all that's left is to wait until nightfall. Borgias nods at her words, then casually asks where Ultimacia is. Nebulum replies that she went out to personally check on the condition of the refugees. That answer catches Borgias off guard, and he raises an eyebrow, clearly annoyed that Ultimacia went alone. When Nebulum says she knows where their monarch went, he immediately snaps at her, warning that as one of the matured, it's her duty to help guide Ultimacia and stop her from acting on whims. If she just agrees with everything like a loyal pet, then there's no point in standing beside their monarch at all. Tears start to well up in Nebulum's eyes as she apologizes, clearly upset with herself for letting Ultimacia go unaccompanied. But Borgias, growing more frustrated, tells her this is not the time to start crying like a child. He demands that she tell him Ultimacia's current location right away. With a shaky voice, Nebulum confesses that the monarch went to the old district. Elsewhere in the city, Ultimacia quietly approaches a crying child she finds sitting alone. Meanwhile, far from that scene, Lieutenant General Rowan is given a quiet update by one of his men. The preparations are complete. Rowan, still surrounded by a group of women, casually waves it off and says to go ahead with the plan. However, his moment of peace shatters in an instant when Crimson bursts into the room. He turns pale and drops to his knees, panicking at the sight of her. With his face buried to the floor, he begs for mercy, saying that as her loyal servant, she should have at least given him some warning. Crimson doesn't waste time on his theatrics. She walks up and clocks him across the face with no hesitation. Then she scolds him for being completely useless in his role. He was supposed to be gathering intelligence from inside the military while posing as a high-ranking officer. Rowan, whose true name is Gollum, insists that he has done his job and gathered all the necessary info. Crimson narrows her eyes, then calls out to Chimera, instructing her to step forward. From the shadows, Chimera emerges, bows respectfully, and waits for her next command. Crimson gives her a single mission: ensure that Ultimacia ends up crossing paths with Ragna. Once that happens, she tells them both to work together and kill the winged monarch. Back in the streets, Ragna and Slime stand silently among the massive crowd, watching as the kingdom's soldiers prepare a spectacle. The people gasp when they see rows of severed dragon heads on display. An officer steps forward and announces that the kingdom is under siege from a vast dragon horde. Though he acknowledges how terrifying that sounds, he assures everyone that they are already pushing back the invasion. He claims the dragons shown here are just a sample of the hundreds they've already slain, and proudly declares that the army is winning. His speech ends with a dramatic vow: they will exterminate every last dragon and restore peace to the land. The crowd cheers wildly as the dragon corpses are set ablaze, convinced that their safety is guaranteed. But Ragna doesn't join in. Watching the flames dance, he feels nothing but unease. Something about the whole event screams deception. He can't explain why, but his instincts scream that it's a trap. And in that moment, he senses a presence. Ultimacia strolls right past him through the crowd without even noticing. He freezes, overwhelmed by shock, barely breathing. Ragna's first instinct is to act, but he remembers Crimson's warning: he must not face Ultimacia alone. His hand inches toward his sword as he struggles to hold himself back. That's when she pauses and turns to him, her voice soft as she asks if he is feeling alright. Looking into her eyes, Ragna whispers her name under his breath, caught between instinct and reason as his grip tightens on his weapon. Meanwhile, Rowan tells Crimson that he thought their plan was simply to observe the movements of the winged bloodline as it destroyed the country. However, Crimson explains that something intriguing has come up that changes everything. His name is Ragna. Because of him, she believes they now have a real chance to hunt down the winged monarch. Rowan reminds her that they had discussed this plan in their last meeting, but insists they should not act yet. Crimson refuses to take his advice. Rowan then reveals that through his Recondrone's eyes, he saw the moment Ultimacia seized control of the capital using time manipulation magic. Crimson responds calmly, saying she already knew, and assures him that he does not need to worry because Ragna will be the one to fight her. She adds that Ragna's compatibility far exceeds anyone else's. Rowan admits that he's glad to hear that since he hates fighting and is relieved to have a strong new ally. However, he questions what good strength is when facing someone who can control time itself. On the other side, Ragna is battling with himself internally, unsure whether to fight Ultimacia, especially since Crimson told him not to. He believes he could defeat her in a one-on-one match, but starts to doubt himself, especially as his future self urges him to attack. Yet, unlike that future version of him, he now feels no hostility toward her. Watching her holding a child's hand, he begins to second-guess everything, growing anxious as time runs out to make a decision. The scene shifts to Chimera mocking Rowan for being overwhelmed and cowardly. She offers to complete the mission herself, which surprises Rowan. He snaps back that she's just a beast with a bird brain raised at home. Chimera throws it right back at him, saying he's nothing but a pile of scrap. She proudly adds that at least she considers their master's needs and acts accordingly. Feeling trapped, Rowan tries to embarrass her by asking her to solve a math problem. But just as he starts laughing at her silence, Crimson hits him, warning both of them that insulting each other is like insulting their creator. She reminds them that, although they were made using different methods, they are both masterpieces of her knowledge and skill. After that, they start watching the recon footage captured by Rowan's drone. While watching, Crimson also begins questioning the point of physical strength against time magic. Out of nowhere, she orders Golem to self-destruct. He panics and demands to know why. Crimson suggests that he must think she's just a fool obsessed with her new toy, betting on a fight she cannot win. Terrified, Rowan insists that he didn't mean any of that, so she tells him not to blow up just yet. Instead, she wants him to choose the right moment during battle to self-destruct. Rowan begs for mercy, but Crimson responds with another punch. She then tells them that despite Ultimatia's time magic, she is not invincible. The scene shifts to Michael and his group facing off against Woltakamwe, who laughs at the idea that they managed to defeat Diza's Troa. He mocks them, saying their faces reveal that they know it's time to die. He demands that they reveal everything they know about the person who gave them their silver swords. However, he offers them a choice: talk or fight him if they dare. Back in the city, Slime warns Ultimatia to stay away from Ragna unless she wants to get puked on. He explains that his friend is sick from being around so many people and then mocks him for being so weak. As Ragna starts to prepare for an attack, he hesitates once he sees Ultimatia getting ready to leave. He admits that he chose not to fight her yet, preferring to meet up with Crimson first so they can hunt her together. He thanks Slime for stopping him from acting rashly, but as he tries to apologize to Ultimatia, Slime suddenly comments that even though she's just a silly human, she smells nice. To everyone's shock, he hops down from Ragna's shoulders and walks up to her, asking if he can have a taste. The child with Ultimatia stops him and reminds her that they still need to find his parents. Slime is surprised to see her helping a child, and Ragna, recalling all of Ultimatia's cruelty, asks why she is being so kind. She simply replies that kindness doesn't need a reason. Ragna, struggling to contain himself, grabs Slime's hand and insists they leave, but Ultimatia stops them and asks if they've met before. Ragna coldly says no, only to be interrupted by the arrival of Nebulim. Nebulim informs Ultimatia that Borgias has discovered her location and is very upset. She apologizes for the trouble, and he tells her it's alright. However, he asks about the boy she is speaking to, while eyeing Ragna suspiciously. Nebulim observes him and concludes that he looks like a dragon hunter. Ragna tenses up, ready to fight, but is surprised when Ultimatia openly tells Nebulim that they've just been talking. She explains that the young man is feeling sick due to the large crowd. Nebulim is stunned that such a thing is possible and realizes that's probably why he hasn't been feeling well either. Suddenly, he starts vomiting just like Ragna, which worries Ultimatia. She suggests they go somewhere less crowded. The scene changes again. Crimson and her servants are still reviewing the footage of the winged monarch. Chimera asks Golan how he managed to capture such clear images of her. Realizing Golan doesn't fully grasp what he's watching, Chimera explains why Ultimatia appears so suddenly in the footage. It's because time had been frozen until she stepped in front of the king. Now, watching the video back, she wonders why Ultimatia chose that exact moment to restart the flow of time. Rowan suggests maybe her magic ran out, or perhaps there's a limit to how long she can hold time still. But then he adds a third possibility. What if she rewound time at that precise instant? Crimson tells him he got it right with that last one. She explains that the only reason they're able to see Ultimatia on camera is because she didn't rewind the entire scene. Instead, she only rewound the fatal wounds that killed the king. Crimson then turns to Chimera and asks her to assess the situation using her instincts, because there's a crucial limitation: Ultimatia can't pause and rewind time at the same time. In order to rewind, she first has to let time flow again, and while she's rewinding, she's unable to freeze anything. That detail leads Crimson to believe she's uncovered a weakness in Ultimatia's time control magic. She paints a scenario. Imagine they ambush Ultimatia and kill her. In response, Ultimatia will instinctively rewind her body back to life, but while she's doing that, she won't be able to freeze time, meaning they can strike again before she finishes. If they keep repeating this process, killing her over and over, Crimson asks what the result would be. Rowan answers that even the first seat would burn through all their magical energy. Crimson lights up, saying that would mean Ultimatia would die, unable to rewind anymore. However, she also warns that Ultimatia will retaliate with extreme, magic-heavy counterattacks. That's why Crimson places her hopes on Ragna, praying he'll be able to stop her and finish the job. She then remembers when Ragna was eager to start the dragon hunt and told her that the most important target was the winged monarch, leader of all dragons. Back then, Crimson didn't believe such a thing was possible, but he told her that in the future, they had succeeded by working together. That's why she now believes they must have used this very method to beat her. Crimson tells her servants that time control magic has clear limits and vulnerabilities. The most dangerous limitation is the inability to use multiple powers at once, and because of that, she believes this is the only realistic method they have to kill Ultimatia. Still, she wraps up her strategy by stating that in a one-on-one, Ragna might actually be able to beat her. The real problem, though, will be Nebulim and Borgias, who must not be allowed to interfere. She finishes her briefing by reminding them just how crucial their roles are in the mission. That's why she asks them to proceed with extreme caution and precision. Meanwhile, in the city, Slime looks up at Ragna and asks what happened when he came face to face with Ultimatia, but Ragna doesn't respond. He's lost in thought, silently wondering whether he made the right call. Ragna knows that his future self himself would have jumped into battle without a second thought. But deep down, he also understands that kind of recklessness didn't always lead to good outcomes. He quietly admits to himself that he's not the same person he'll become later, because unlike that version, he hasn't lost anyone, at least not yet. That's probably why he isn't burning with rage like before. Even so, despite being sure he made the right call, he still feels upset and can't quite figure out why. Suddenly, Slime jumps onto his neck, trying to hurt him for ignoring him. But Ragna doesn't even flinch and calmly asks if they can contact Crimson. Surprised, Slime shows him a device they can use to reach her. Ragna tells him to report that he's found the target, and Slime is left speechless, even more shocked when he watches Ragna walk off on his own. Meanwhile, Crimson is tired of having to constantly boost her servants' morale. She knows they're ready to die for her, so it makes sense they wouldn't trust someone like Ragna yet. After all, he's a new face, just a regular human, and has no loyalty to anyone. But Crimson also knows this mistrust is only temporary. She's been planting subliminal suggestions into Ragna's mind since the moment they met. One day, when she tells him to kill without hesitation, he'll do it. He's just an ordinary guy with extraordinary power, which makes turning him into her puppet all too easy. Just as she gets up to tell her servants to solidify the plan, Slime bursts in, furious, and accuses Ragna of betraying them. Elsewhere, Ultimacia finally reunites the lost child with his parents. She thanks Nebulum for going along with her whim, even though he's clearly not feeling well. He tells her it's an honor to support one of her kind acts. Embarrassed, she insists she isn't kind, but Nebulum gets upset and disagrees. Hearing his reasoning, she thanks him for believing her actions aren't just self-serving. They start talking about how the child's family was actually on today's list of people set to disappear. Ultimacia sighs in relief, which leaves Ragna stunned. Nebulum explains that he can make people vanish painlessly inside a barrier, and as long as they're within it, no one will notice they're gone. Smiling, Ultimacia says escaping death is impossible, so the least she can offer is release from fear and pain. She sees this as a form of salvation, letting people stay happy right up to the moment they're erased. While Ragna silently reels from the horror of what he's hearing, she casually mentions that showing off the dead dragon bodies was effective, so she plans to repeat the tactic across the capital to calm the people down. But before she can say more, Ragna steps forward. He tells her he finally realized what had been making him sick. It wasn't self-control that stopped him from fighting, it was fear. He admits he was afraid of her eerie kindness and scared he wouldn't be able to wield the power he had been given. He thought he was staying cool, but now he sees it was self-deception. As he grips his weapon, he confesses that the anger bottled up inside him was what really made him sick, and now he's ashamed of his hesitation. Ultimacia says she doesn't understand anything he's talking about. Then suddenly, Nebulum collapses and dies before her eyes. Ragna apologizes to Crimson for throwing away the plan she carefully crafted to kill the winged monarch, but he knows that if he doesn't face Ultimacia now, then his vow to exterminate all dragons means nothing. Seeing him draw his sword, Ultimacia feels sorrowful that he's become her enemy, but then she unleashes her power and tries to reason with him, until he slashes her down with a single blow. She rewinds time and reconstructs herself, only for Ragna to strike again with the same outcome. He keeps attacking, undeterred, even as she continues to rewind. Realizing he's dead set on killing her, she finally launches a fierce counterattack to crush him completely. Ragna dodges and defeats her again, shouting that she can rewind as many times as she wants. Then he strikes her with multiple silver blades and declares that the greatest kindness she could offer the people is to die right here. The scene jumps to the future, where Ultimacia drives her blood-forged sword straight through Ragna's heart. She insists that she's going to make him one of her own, turning him into part of the dragon bloodline. She promises he won't lose himself, but says that once the change takes hold, he'll start to see the world through a different lens. As the blade digs deeper, he lets out a scream that sounds like it's coming from the core of his soul, as if he's being set on fire from within. He can barely form the words, but says it feels like he's fading away, like everything he's ever cared about is already gone. Ultimacia leans in gently and pleads with him to stop clinging to his hatred. She tells him that if he just lets go, they can live together, and calls it an act of mercy. To her, this is the most sacred offer she can give, but Ragna thinks of Leonica, and that image gives him the strength to move. With a final burst of will, he grabs his sword and fights back against the transformation. Theseus Troa jumps in to stop him, but Woltekamwe gets in his way and blocks the attack. That brief opening is all Ragna needs. He yanks Ultimacia's blood sword from his chest, and by doing that, he ends her life. Just before collapsing, he looks her in the eyes and tells her that even if his life means nothing, he won't ever let her win. She watches him with a broken expression, and the dragons around them are left stunned, wondering why he turned down her kindness. Ultimacia looks down at him and finally understands. She admits to herself that she was wrong. He was never meant to join them. Dying here like this, it was the only ending that made sense for someone like him, so she asks Desistrois to carry them home on the wind. Flustered and blushing, he scrambles to respond, clearly shaken by the request. As he stammers out a reply, Ulta, Zora, and Borgias watch him and laugh, amused by how clumsy he becomes in front of her. The dragons begin their journey back, and Ultimacia leaves them with a final message. She says that everything that happened today has brought the world one step closer to fulfilling God's will. That's why she wants them all to give thanks to the ones who died here. It's the only way their souls can truly rest in peace. Once the dragons are gone, a strange capsule rises up from the ground. As it opens, Slime and Golem step out and look around at the destruction. When Slime spots Ragna's lifeless body, he walks toward it, clearly curious. But just as he's about to reach him, Crimson stops him. He wants to check the body himself, and he isn't about to let Slime interfere until he knows what he's dealing with. After a quick inspection, Crimson realizes the truth. Ragna is human, but he somehow received the blood of the dragons and still managed to resist its power. That kind of resolve is unheard of. Crimson, clearly impressed, decides he's going to bring him back. There might be something incredible hidden in him, and Crimson wants to find out what that is. Back in the present, Crimson and Golem are watching everything unfold through the recon footage. Golem turns to him and nervously asks what this means for the operation. Crimson, completely caught off guard, starts venting. Of all the people in the capital, Ragna just happens to cross paths with Ultimacia. The odds of that are insane, and he starts pacing while trying to process it. Eventually, he stops himself and takes a breath. He remembers that their original goal was just to measure Ragna's strength, so if he ends up defeating the monarch here and now, then it still counts as a win. Even so, Crimson doesn't let go of the one thought buzzing in the back of his head. If anything goes wrong, he's ready to step in and handle it himself. Suddenly, Crimson receives a report from Chimera, who tells her that the fight has already destroyed the second southern wall of the castle. She adds that based on how things are going, Ragna looks like he has the upper hand. However, she says she still hasn't spotted the two superior dragons who usually stay close to Ultimacia. That makes Crimson pause. She remembers that just as the battle kicked off, the barrier around the capital vanished, and that makes her wonder if Nebulem might already be dead. Without wasting time, she tells Chimera to return to her side immediately. Next, she sends Slime toward the area that smells the most delicious, telling him to shapeshift and move fast. After getting that order, she turns to Golem and instructs him to intercept Borgias, who she sees trying to escape the castle. Golem complains that his current body isn't built for a fight and that he'll be completely limited. Crimson ignores the excuse and tells him that stalling is all she's asking for. He agrees with a sigh, then hands her a key before heading out. He explains that it opens the chamber containing his primary weapon, and he prays it won't come to that. As she watches him disappear, Crimson feels a chill run through her. She knows her plan could fall apart the second Ultimacia unleashes her full power, so she's counting on Ragna to keep the monarch cornered long enough to stop that from happening. The scene returns to the battlefield, where Ultimacia is getting killed again and again. She starts to wonder if she's already died too many times, and whether she still has enough time left to rewind. At that moment, Borgias shows up and apologizes for arriving late. He tells her he's about to absorb the blood from the castle to charge up his cannon. He admits it's unfortunate that she's stuck in the blast radius, but insists this is the kind of extreme move they have to make. Before he can launch the attack, Golem blindsides him with a solid hit, then quickly relocates to stay clear of the cannon. From a distance, he watches as Ragna strikes Ultimacia once more, and for a moment, he actually starts to believe Ragna might be able to win this fight. That hope fades fast. Out of nowhere, Ragna gets caught inside a containment barrier conjured by Nebulem. The dragon looks at him and admits his freezing power is completely beyond normal limits. He knows he's in bad shape, barely clinging to life, but he clenches his jaw and says he just needs to hold on a few seconds more. Ultimacia thanks him quietly and says she's nearly ready to rewind time by 3.1 seconds. She only needs him to hold the line a little longer. To make that happen, she starts pushing a wave of repulsive force straight from her blood, something powerful enough to engulf Ragna completely. Feeling the shift, Ragna unleashes everything he's got, tearing through the barrier with his full silver power. Cracks begin to spread across the walls, but Nebulem holds firm, prepared to burn through the rest of his life if that's what it takes. Then Slime arrives. He stands there for a moment, watching Nebulem without saying a word. The next second, he devours the dragon entirely. With Nebulem gone, the barrier falls apart, and Ragna breaks free right as Ultimacia completes her time rewind. As she gets ready to reset the field, Ragna closes the distance using his silver flight and tears through the sky toward her. He reaches her instantly and lands a clean, fatal strike. As Ultimacia begins to vanish, her thoughts drift back to something Wolfcombie once said. He told her she was too slow to be a real monarch because it takes her a tenth of a second, sometimes 2, to stop time. In this era, even a tenth of a second is a fatal delay. She doesn't know why that memory comes to her now, but she finds herself thinking about his words. She wonders what he meant when he said us. In her mind, Wolt Kumwe answers clearly. Us refers to him, and every other person who has crossed into that absurd level of power. Ragna slams another crushing blow straight into Ultimatia's face. Standing right in front of her, he calmly tells her that they're no longer inside the capital, which means he doesn't need to hold back anymore. Without saying another word, he unleashes a brutal combo, hammering her again and again with everything he's got. While she takes the full force of the assault, her mind flashes back to something Wolt Kumwe once told her. He warned that if she ever stood against someone overwhelmingly strong, she would find herself wishing he were there to help. And if that wasn't an option, then she should use her trump card immediately. That one move, he said, was guaranteed to work. Taking his advice to heart, she mutters under her breath, "World, return," and instantly rewinds time. In the blink of an eye, Ragna finds himself standing back in the moment where the kingdom's soldiers are giving their morale-boosting speech. He stands frozen, trying to process what just happened. Something about this doesn't sit right. His instincts are on high alert, though he can't figure out why. Still, he knows one thing for sure: if he doesn't move now, it could already be too late. While this unfolds, Ultimatia's voice echoes through the frozen world, explaining that she just stopped time and rewound the entire world. She admits it drains an enormous amount of magic, which is why she almost never does it. But Ragna was too dangerous. She had no choice. She turns to him and says the battle is over, or more accurately, it hasn't even started yet. Watching him in silence, she wonders what to do next. His hatred toward her runs so deep, so intense, that it completely confuses her. She doesn't even know what she did to deserve that kind of fury. A part of her wants to ask, but deep down, she knows she'll probably never find out. In this suspended world where death hangs heavy, she refuses to sink low enough to kill someone in cold blood, even one who curses the name of God. She lifts her hand and uses her magic to relocate everyone from the wall, leaving only her and Ragna behind. Smiling faintly, she starts thinking back, how he once tried to protect others during a shortage of brain matter. But her thoughts shift quickly when she notices a strange child standing next to him, Slime. Ultimatia wonders if Ragna knows the child. If he does, then eliminating him would be the logical move. Just as that thought crosses her mind, her eyes widen when she sees Ragna twitch a finger. The movement sends a chill down her spine. Still, she reassures herself, it can't be real. She didn't sense any magic rewind. It must be her imagination playing tricks. Suddenly, Nebulim appears and starts pummeling Ragna, furious over how he treated the monarch. He slams him with blow after blow while Ultimatia watches quietly. Seeing no reaction, she sighs in relief, convinced that her earlier panic was just nerves. But she reminds herself she can't afford to make those kinds of mistakes again. Gently, she tells Nebulim to stop, noticing that his arms are beginning to burn. As she looks more closely at the fluid leaking from around Ragna's body, she begins to suspect it's some kind of acid, something powerful enough to eat through flesh. That must be the true nature of the strange boy traveling with him. She warns Nebulim not to touch it, or he could end up seriously injured. Nebulim argues that if they don't finish Ragna now, he'll just recover. She agrees that it's a risk, but she also remembers how Ragna broke through all her defenses before, making her magic completely useless. Even now, despite being beaten to a pulp, none of his wounds are fatal. She studies his body carefully, comparing it to a silver blade. Even though there's no silver glow right now, she believes the power is still buried deep inside him. Worse, it seems almost immune to magic. She figures it would take an overwhelming blast to do any real damage. Because sunlight drains their kind of strength, she knows a clean kill is going to be hard. So she turns to Borgias and tells him to send a message to one of the 3 people not frozen in time. She wants the light, an offensive weapon from the barrier, to be fired directly at Ragna. She believes that kind of pure attack will be far more effective than any spell. Borgias nods, but reminds her that Ragna isn't the only threat they're dealing with. Ultimatia agrees and says that once they'd handled this one, they'll hunt down the rest. Then she orders Nebulim to retreat, warning him that the blast from the light might cause massive collateral damage. Nebulim hesitates, clearly conflicted, but she gently assures him, no matter what, she will always rely on him. Right now, she needs him to create a protective barrier around the area to shield the people. She's fully aware that the light could wipe out more than just the target. As Nebulim heads out to complete the task, Ultimatia stands in silence over Ragna. Even though he's her enemy, she admits to herself that she feels something for him. Maybe it's the faint trace of a connection, the same way she feels toward her kin. But it's not right to feel that, not after all once he's killed. She tells herself that once he's gone, the feeling will fade and she'll forget all about it. Still, before she turns away, she hopes that at least his death will be peaceful and free of pain. But then Ragna starts to move. The memory of her blood sword twisting through his body comes rushing back. His eyes snap open, burning with rage. He snarls that she won't get away, not this time. He won't let her have even a second more. Ultimatia's eyes go wide in horror as she sees him rising to his feet. His glare is cold, sharp, and final. Then, with a voice like steel, he makes a promise. She's not walking away from this alive. Ragna, moving slower than before, begins walking straight toward the monarch. Ultimatia stares in disbelief, then panics and hurls fire at him to push him back. Deep down, she wonders if her time manipulation magic is starting to break. Normally, no one should be able to move when time is stopped unless they share royal blood with King Themud. Her thoughts flash back to Crimson's old explanation that time stop and rewind can be tweaked to exclude certain people. It's a trick usually reserved for bloodline members, allowing for tactical movement during stop time. Back in the present, Ultimatia screams at Ragna, demanding to know how he's moving without her permission. Fear starts crawling into her voice. Seeing her in danger, Nebulum instantly strengthens the barrier between them, determined to keep her from getting hurt again. But Ragna doesn't stop. He lowers his head and charges forward, breaking through the multi-layered defense with raw force. When he finally reaches her, he stares her down and asks if she's scared. Then he asks how someone with so much blood on her hands could be afraid of one person. Without waiting for a reply, he raises his sword and slices at her again and again, cutting her down in front of everyone. Desperate to survive, she triggers another rewind, which restores movement to everyone in the area. Ultimatia watches him advance once more, confused and overwhelmed. She thinks about rewinding the world further, but then hesitates. Would stopping time work better now? Would it even work at all? For the first time, she has no answers. Her thoughts spiral, and she starts trembling as a wave of dread crashes over her. This isn't how she planned to die. Her chest tightens, and as tears start forming in her eyes, she finds herself silently begging for Wolfkamui to be here. Right before Ragna can strike again, his body gives out. The world blurs into red. He collapses hard, groaning as pain shoots through his body. He gasps, struggling to breathe, then realizes something's wrong inside him. It dawns on him that he's breaking down from overusing the power tied to his future self. His body just can't keep up anymore. Blood pours out beneath him as he crashes to the ground, helpless. Suddenly, Borgias yells at Nebulum to shield the progenitor. He's preparing to fire the Aurora Ray. Seconds later, the weapon launches, sending a blinding beam of light tearing through the battlefield. The blast levels the area in a violent explosion. Borgias doesn't care about the damage. He just wants confirmation that the target is gone. Nebulum scans the wreckage and spots something new. He reports that Ragna isn't alone anymore. Two more figures have entered the scene. One is a massive cat, the other a mysterious human woman. Borgias instantly turns to Ultimatia and urges her to stop time again. But she doesn't move. She stands frozen, stuck in place, completely shaken by everything that just happened. Meanwhile, Crimson looks on silently, watching Ragna bleed out on the ground. Her expression darkens, and she quietly scolds him for ignoring her orders. Then she shifts her gaze to Nebulum standing guard over Ultimatia, and the gears in her mind begin turning. She starts wondering what her next move should be, and what exactly she's going to do with them now. Ragna stands tall, watching the dragons tremble in fear. The look on their faces tells him everything. He's crushed their will to fight. Ultimatia, shaken to her core, starts doubting herself. She wonders if she's been casting her magic wrong or misusing it altogether. Seeing her in such a fragile state, both Nebulum and Borgias try to calm her down. However, before they can soothe her, she suddenly speaks to the being they're up against. That alone prompts Crimson to go on a rampage, destroying parts of the city without hesitation. This ruthless attack finally breaks Ultimatia. With tears streaming down her face, she stares at the chaos in disbelief, unable to understand what's happening. Crimson, cold and unflinching, tells her what it is. It's destruction. This, she says, will rip off the mask hiding Ultimatia's fake compassion. Then Crimson urges her to listen closely to the cries of those who are losing their loved ones. The screams echo through the wreckage, and Crimson warns her that the death toll will only rise. As desperation spreads, she asks Ultimatia what she's going to do. Isn't she supposed to be the kind, merciful dragon monarch? The only way to save these people, Crimson says, is to use her magic. It's her only option. Hearing this, Ultimatia panics. She tries to rewind reality, but before she can activate her power, Nebulum stops her. He reminds her that if she rewinds the world now, she will completely drain her magic, and that's exactly what their enemies want. Meanwhile, Crimson orders Chimera, who is carrying Ragna, to retreat. Back in the city ruins, Ultimatia turns to Nebulum, pleading for guidance. People are suffering and dying everywhere, and she doesn't know what to do. Through her tears, she wonders aloud if this might actually be God's will. Maybe this destruction is part of what's needed to build a new world. Still, even if that's the case, she regrets not being able to stop it. She never wanted people to suffer like this. Overwhelmed by grief, she breaks down sobbing and Nebulum can only embrace her silently. Elsewhere, Crimson and Chimera make their way through the debris. They pass by injured civilians and screams of pain, but neither of them reacts. Eventually, they run into Golem, who casually congratulates them on a job well done. He tells Crimson that he prepared the escape gate she requested. Then he smirks and compliments her talent for causing chaos. Crimson, unimpressed, grabs a glass bottle and smashes it into his face without hesitation. She glares at him and reminds him that she also ordered a bomb to be planted in the Grand Clock Tower in the Maru district of the Old City. Right after that, she grumbles about how the castle walls didn't explode as dramatically as she had hoped. Golem apologizes, explaining that he held back because there are shops in that area he still wants to visit. Annoyed by the excuse, Crimson shoves the broken bottle into his eye and coldly tells him that the value of life always depends on timing. And right now, she says, the lives of the people in Les had reached their highest price. Crimson thinks to herself that if the destruction had been even more dramatic and fatal, Ultimacia probably would have been forced to rewind time. Frustrated, she scolds Golem harshly, warning him not to make her waste her hand for nothing. She then makes it clear that he won't get another chance and demands an apology. Golem bows his head and admits that he did plant the bombs just like she asked. However, he had sent the signal to stop the detonation. He wanted to see how Crimson would react. He found it strange that she had suddenly changed the plan, taking such a huge risk. If it worked, it could potentially save more lives, which didn't seem like her at all. Because of this, Golem started to wonder if maybe meeting Ragna had changed her. But after seeing her ruthless reaction, he realizes he was wrong. She's still the same cold, unforgiving master she's always been. The scene then shifts as Crimson opens the escape gate Golem had prepared. Just before stepping through, she orders him to stay behind. She needs him to destroy his current body so that he can revert to his base form and monitor the bloodline's movements without drawing attention. Golem is caught off guard. He believes staying behind in his base form in a place like this is more punishment than task. Crimson, completely unfazed, tells him she has no use for a tool that questions her commands. That is why he must stay behind and endure a suffering equivalent to death. In the next scene, Crimson arrives with Chimera at a vast white hall while they carry Ragna's unconscious body. Meanwhile, Nebulum reflects on what he actually achieved in the battle, because deep down, he feels like he did nothing at all. He tells himself that he's weak and remembers something Borgias once said, that he's still in a state of maturation. To his surprise, Borgias explained that it's because he's still adapting to the blood of the progenitor. This adaptation process is why the Bloodwing refers to them as the 13th seat, although that title only lasts for a short period. During that time, the lineage gauges each individual's potential. Borgias had told him that Ulta Zora took an entire year, Desus Troa only needed a month, and Kemui adjusted in less than 2 days. Then he looked at Nebulum and told him in disbelief that he never had a maturation period at all. This meant that Nebulum's compatibility with the bloodline might even surpass Wolt Kemui's. According to Borgias, that made him destined to become the backbone of the lineage, the strongest support for the progenitor. He told him he should be proud of that fact, and more importantly, conscious of his power. But remembering those words now, Nebulum doesn't believe any of it. He failed to protect Ultimacia, and worse, only managed to get himself injured. That's why he questions whether he truly has what it takes to surpass Kemui. In his mind, if Kemui had been here, none of this would have happened in the first place. He realizes that now he has to be strong because otherwise he's worthless. All at once, power starts pouring out of him, so immense that even Crimson senses it from across the world. As Nebulum completes his transformation, Ultimacia stares at him in shock. He promises that their enemy won't escape again. On the other side, Crimson immediately understands what's happening. She always knew Nebulum had that kind of potential as a member of the bloodline, and now she wonders if she's finally seeing it come to light. The power they all talked about so often. She realizes that he's probably figured out she's in another dimensional realm and is now actively searching for her. Crimson reflects that while barrier magic is technically inferior to spatial magic, it wouldn't be strange for him to sense her presence. Still, she feels confident that he won't be able to reach her. After all, she built the glow chamber at her peak, linking it to every corner of the world. This space has served as the foundation for her secret maneuvers around the globe. So now, even though Nebulum's strength has clearly grown, she knows better than to think he can actually get close. Calmly, she assures herself that even if he does stumble upon her location, the protective wards in this place are far beyond his reach. Then Crimson decides it's time to call the lunar base, since not everything turned out as she planned. Even though some things went her way, there's nothing more to gain here. She tells herself that it's time to prepare for the years ahead because her role in this place is finished. The scene shifts again, showing Leonica and Ragna chasing after a dragon that appears to have slipped away. Since there's still a long time left before sunrise, Leonica tells Ragna they should go after the dragon. However, he tries to stop her because they might end up running into an entire horde or fall right into a trap. She listens but tells him that even if he's right, there's no better option right now than to take the risk. Just like with humans, there are individual differences among dragons too. She explains that since this medieval dragon seems to have good instincts, it could become a real problem later on if it survives long enough. Ragna asks her if it could eventually evolve into a superior dragon, and she tells him that there's no way to know for sure. Either way, it would be careless to think that they're the only ones who can grow stronger and prepare for the future. Then she admits it would be fun to fight a superior dragon someday. Even so, she knows she can't let it run wild just because she thinks it'd be exciting to face off. That's why they need to take their shot and hunt it down now while they still can. The scene shifts, and Ragna wakes up and tells Crimson that he's not going anywhere until Ultimacia is dead. He's in critical condition, but recognizes the place as the teleportation chamber, and demands she let him return to the battlefield. Crimson tries to calm him down and tells him the battle is over. She praises him for the job he did, admitting he was way stronger than she expected. Blushing with satisfaction, she tells him how pathetic Ultimacia looked when she panicked. Then she orders him to get some rest, warning that if he doesn't, she'll rip his head off herself. But Ragna, furious, yells that Ultimacia is still alive, so he doesn't care how proud Crimson is. He tells her to stop looking at him like a creep and swears he won't let Ultimacia live another second. Having made up his mind, he activates his Silverina battle art to force his way back. Crimson quickly orders Chimera to stop him, and after she restrains him, Crimson scolds Ragna for pushing so hard. She reminds him that even he can't damage the teleport chamber, and tells him he needs to go to sleep immediately. Then she notices the chamber was actually damaged, which makes her realize Silverina should never be combined with alternate dimensions. She decides to get rid of it quickly, but just as she moves, Nebulum announces that he's found her. He tells her he's going to destroy the barrier and then pull her out. Crimson tries to flee, but the door won't open because the pressure has warped the environment around it. Seeing that a servant of Ultimacia dared to defile her arcane masterpiece, Crimson flies into a rage. She orders Golem to finish off both Ultimacia and Nebulum. But when Golem fires, the blast only hits Nebulum's face. Ultimacia panics, though Nebulum quickly shows he's fine and unharmed. Right away, he orders Borgias to attack Golem. Meanwhile, Ragna tries to break free once again, ignoring everything else around him. Seeing Ragna help Nebulum and ruin her plan, Crimson grows even more irritated. Still, he doesn't care about her anger and begins unleashing all his power. The scene cuts to a flashback of Crimson as a child, standing beside a young girl. The girl watches a missile explode and says that peace will never come, not even after the war ends. She says sad and brutal things will keep happening. Even so, she tells Crimson that she still wants to keep living with all her friends. Somewhere else, another young girl is hiding after the battle against Dornia, and notes that it's been 5 days since she took refuge. She believes they'll be attacked again tonight, but suddenly senses something disturbing the dragon's killing intent. She wonders if something happened to the superior dragons just as her attendants interrupt her. They call her princess and scold her for eating dragon meat, saying it's improper behavior. Still chewing, she asks Mayor what he wants and warns that if it's something trivial, she'll kill him. He tells her that the teleportation circle that they set underground attracted someone. It's not a dragon like she expected, but he asks her to use her eyes and confirm what kind of being it is. The scene changes again, and we see Crimson being captured by soldiers. He complains about his bad luck, saying he was thrown out of the globe chamber through a completely different exit than he planned. Still, he figures it's not so bad, since this is the kind of emergency he planned for. What really annoys him is that when he tried to leave the country, he ended up getting caught by the most aggravating human woman alive. That woman turns out to be the second princess of Lys, commander of the special forces in the royal army. She's also known as Argentum Corps Starlia Lys. She asks Fu for a report, but he tells her he already gave it. Still, he repeats it for her anyway. Fu explains that even though those weird people appeared, the teleportation circle wasn't damaged and their plan remains intact. Starlia laughs at how annoyed he is, then asks Mayor about the other person who came through the portal. He explains that the other one is in critical condition and can't talk, but they checked his blood and confirmed he's not a dragon. He adds that the prisoner in front of them agreed to answer all their questions in exchange for medical treatment. Starlia doesn't seem too impressed by that answer, so she decides to deal with the prisoner directly. She offers Crimson some meat as a show of goodwill and watches as he eats a little. When he tells her it tastes fine, she grins and reveals that it's dragon meat. Crimson immediately starts vomiting, which makes the princess burst into laughter as she tells him not to worry. Nothing bad will happen. Crimson then explains that Starlia was born without arms, but in exchange, she gained a vision so powerful it allows her to perceive the aura of matter itself. Because of that, she learned how to move and control objects freely, something that shocked everyone around her, and because of that, she earned her nickname Princess of Silverwork, which among the Solarians is seen as nothing short of a miracle. Crimson goes on to explain that there are countless stories about the princess and how she has been able to hunt dragons since she was a child. Over the years, she built up such a solid reputation that now, at only 16, she leads the Argentum Corps, an elite combat unit. Not only that, but she has even managed to defeat Dornia, a superior dragon. Still, Crimson admits that isn't what he hates most about her. What really gets under his skin is how hard it is to fool her. Right after that, Starlight begins the interrogation, which forces Crimson to start thinking up a plan on the fly. He knows that the Argentum Corps plans to flee the country because they're being hunted by Ulto Zora and Terratectra. He figures his best move is to join forces with them so they'll help him escape to a safe zone. But the tricky part is getting them to agree to let him leave with Ragna too. That will be tough because of the princess's eyes, which are extremely sensitive to auras. She can even sense the emotional energy that people give off, making it nearly impossible to lie to her. Still, Crimson believes that if he mixes in a bit of truth with his act, he might be able to fool her. He complains to himself about having to deal with this situation, all because the protagonist is still passed out asleep. Suddenly, Starlight interrupts and asks why he isn't answering her question. Crimson quickly apologizes and, to his relief, realizes he managed to trick her using his aura. Encouraged by that small success, he decides to bring out every bit of his acting talent and go all in on the performance. In the next scene, young Starlia comes face to face with Lieutenant General Pereiro. The moment he sees her, he gets visibly nervous, thinking this is the worst possible time to run into her. Even though he tries to keep his composure and greet her politely, Starlia straight up tells him that she's going to purge him. Without hesitation, she drives her sword into his chest, ending his life right there on the spot. At first, everyone assumes the princess has completely lost it, but once they look deeper into the case, the truth comes out. The lieutenant general had been secretly plotting a coup with help from the neighboring country, Garnus. Because of that, people start wondering how she even knew he was guilty, and Starlia reveals that she can tell who to kill just by looking them in the eyes. Back in the present, the others are stunned when they notice Crimson's dragon eyes. Watching their reaction, Crimson figures that since they already know about magic, he might as well lean into it. He recalls how people born with strong magical power usually have some non-human traits. Then he notices that one of the people in the room is a thaumaturge, so he hopes his reveal is convincing enough. Still, he knows that just like back then with the coup, if Starlia finds something off, she might decide to execute him on the spot. That's why he takes the risk and shows his dragon eyes, standing his ground in front of her. Crimson introduces himself as Krish Weiss, a thaumaturge who usually keeps that part hidden. Then he says he's been working in the capital, which makes Mayor immediately ask him what's going on there. Crimson explains that everything was peaceful until suddenly, the kingdom was hit with an unprecedented wave of dragon attacks. While recounting the story, he keeps a tight grip on his aura, aiming to look just nervous enough to show honesty without overdoing it. He wants them to sense guilt over something he can't reveal, hoping that will build trust. He says that by order of the king, the capital took in lots of refugees, and although things were calm at first, that all changed today when the capital got rocked by a string of explosions. The others are shocked, and the mayor immediately asks if it was a dragon attack. Crimson says he's not sure because the blasts came out of nowhere and hit multiple areas. That's when he and his injured servant tried to escape using teleportation magic. Crimson knows this part is critical, since he can't let them find out who was behind the attacks. So playing the victim, he tells them that the magic circle malfunctioned and accidentally brought him here. Mayor doesn't take it well and gets upset, realizing that the capital has fallen under dragon control. Meanwhile, the thaumaturge interrupts to ask Crimson where he learned magic, since it's no easy feat to master, especially military-grade spells. Then he pushes further, asking if Crimson's actually a Solarian defector. Trying to stay composed, Crimson denies it and claims he's not anything impressive, but the thaumaturge immediately calls it, saying he must have nailed it, since the Solarians are ruthless with defectors. He says there's no other reason why someone would be living and hiding outside their territory. Hearing that, Crimson relaxes a bit, relieved that the fake backstory he made up is holding up. He knows the Solarians possess magical skills that far outclass regular humans and are the only human faction that can go toe-to-toe with dragons. Now that it looks like they're starting to trust him, Crimson considers offering to become Starlia's advisor and help them form an alliance. However, Starlia cuts through his plan with a smile, telling him he's a really good liar. She knows everything he said is mixed with a little bit of truth. Crimson gets frustrated, realizing his strategy didn't work. Starlia tells him straight up that lies don't fool her eyes. She explains that she reads a person's aura when they speak, using those variations to spot the truth. Still, she admits that with enough practice, someone can learn to control those fluctuations. Then, with a little smirk, she shows him how she does it, saying that more than the fluctuations, what she really watches is the color of the aura itself. When someone speaks truthfully, the aura turns blue. When they lie, it shifts to red. She reveals that she has a unique sensory skill that makes her incredibly hard to fool. Then, locking eyes with Crimson, she says his aura isn't red, but even though it's blue, there's still something off about the shade, which takes Crimson by surprise. He quickly confesses that he did lie, although he really is a thaumaturge who escaped from the capital. Before he can finish, Starlia points her sword at him and tells him to pick it up. She says he's a skilled liar and, as a reward, offers him a weapon she crafted herself. Crimson, confused by her sudden generosity, hesitates, but when she insists, he grabs the sword. Just then, she snatches it back and reveals that her silver tools allow her eyes to go beyond just reading emotions. They let her see the true nature of things. She casually adds that, for example, Mayor Isaac Stern may act stiff and uptight, but his true essence lies in his glasses. When Isaac hears that, he gets offended, but Starlia keeps going, completely ignoring his reaction. She says that besides the shine of his glasses, the rest of his body is pretty dull. Isaac complains that she should take the situation seriously instead of mocking him, but she brushes him off. Then she turns to Crimson and introduces him to her sword master, Garm Bladewolf. To the princess, Garm's bond with his sword is so deep that it feels like his weapon is an extension of his own body. She calls it beautiful, watching him as if he and the blade are one. Then she turns to Crimson and explains that a person's true nature is the summary of their life story. Because of that, there's no way to fake it. With that in mind, she tells him that she sees a dark mass of death surrounding his aura. Right after, she orders all her troops to draw their swords. She asks Crimson how many people he's killed and accuses him of being the one behind the explosions in the capital. Crimson tries to explain, but Starlia ignores him and says that even Dornia, the superior dragon, feels like a better person than him. Cornered, Crimson calls out to the thaumaturge, hoping he might recognize his worth and help him out. But the man refuses. Everyone follows their commander when she makes a call based on her intuition. Then Starlia cuts the moment short and tells Crimson his time has come. Outwardly, Crimson looks panicked, but inside, he remains calm because he knows he absolutely cannot die here. He grits his teeth, annoyed that the princess keeps trying to uncover his true nature. He thinks that if she would just stop, they could work together and both come out ahead. So he decides that if he dies here, he'll retreat into the base and use that chance to grab Ragna and escape. Just before what seems like his final moment, he thinks about how Ulto Zora and Terra Tectra are eventually going to show up and slaughter the princess and her entire army. Still, that won't be his problem anymore, and in his mind, he casually wishes them good luck. But right before the killing blow lands, Ragna appears and stops the strike, refusing to let anyone kill Crimson. Ragna easily snatches the princess's sword and says that hunting Crimson down is his job, so he won't let anyone else do it. Then he turns to Crimson and asks if he really did something so horrible to deserve this. Crimson plays the victim, insisting that he's innocent. Isaac, stunned by Ragna's sudden appearance, tries to figure out where he came from, but his attention shifts when he sees Garm lying unconscious on the ground. And then, unexpectedly, Starlia collapses too, shaken by whatever it is she just witnessed. Crimson watches closely, wondering how Starlia sees Ragna, since her perception of the world is so unique. After all, Ragna is someone who surpassed his limits and became one with the silver blade. What Starlia sees is not a man, but a sword with human arms. The shock of it overwhelms her, and she collapses again, which causes chaos among her soldiers. They rush in to attack Ragna for scaring their princess, but he effortlessly knocks them all aside, leaving everyone speechless. Starlia stares in awe, captivated by the perfect fusion between a human and Silverina. One of her attendants remembers how the princess used to lose track of time crafting silver swords. That obsession got so bad it even caused her engagement to be cancelled, which she was totally fine with because she never wanted to get married anyway. Her tutor, however, wasn't thrilled, since she would have earned a big reward if Starlia had gone through with it. She begged her to consider marriage in the future, hoping she could finally retire in peace. Back in the present, the tutor watches the princess get flustered over Ragna and thinks maybe her chance has finally come. Starlia admires his body, the raw energy of Silverina that surrounds him, and how he manages to be both powerful and calm at the same time. Most of all, she's completely drawn in by his ridiculously handsome face, so she turns to Nazarena, looking for advice on what to do next. Ragna, like everyone else in the room, has no idea how to interpret her reaction. Isaac, on the other hand, snaps at the princess and tells her to stop joking around because Ragna is still an enemy. Then Ragna tries to talk to her, but she hides behind Nazarena, too embarrassed to face him. Crimson steps in, speaking through Ragna, and says they don't intend to fight. If they're willing to spare him, they'll follow the princess's orders. This leads Isaac to lock them up while they figure out what to do with them. Once they're alone, Ragna tells Crimson it's time to talk. Crimson agrees, but then Sucker punches him and forces him to kneel. Ragna, caught off guard, asks why he's trying to run away. Crimson fires back and wants to know why Ragna keeps interfering with his plans. Ragna answers honestly. He can't just turn his back and run. He knows that if they let Ultimacia live any longer, even more people will die. Crimson reminds him that the battle was already lost, which is exactly why he had to pull him out of it. Even after everything, all Crimson got in return was resistance and the destruction of one of his most important creations. On top of that, thanks to Ragna, he has no idea where Chimera or Golem are now, which only adds to his frustration. So Crimson asks how he plans to make up for those losses. Ragna tells him that as compensation, he'll hunt down Ultimacia, which just earns him another punch to the face. Afterward, Ragna asks Crimson if they can head back to the capital once he's recovered, but Crimson keeps scolding him, convinced that he still doesn't understand a thing. Ragna groans a little from the pain and tells him that hitting him won't change how he feels. Then he asks what happened to Slime, and Crimson admits that he completely forgot about him. Suddenly, he notices a bit of slime stuck to Ragna's body, so with a quick chant, he manages to bring him back to life. However, what he gets is just a mini version, which makes him believe he wasted valuable resources. Crimson punches Ragna again, blaming him for all of it. Later on, Slime asks where they are. Crimson explains that they're currently at a military training base. He then goes on to describe the dangerous situation that everyone in the facility is currently facing. Meanwhile, in another part of the base, people are starting to riot after being locked up for 5 days straight, demanding to speak with Starlia. Isaac and the Thaumaturge watch from a distance, visibly stressed over the situation because they still don't know why these people were brought here. Isaac is especially worried because trying to cram 1,500 people into one place like this could easily trigger a full-on rebellion. Still, he believes they didn't have much choice. If they hadn't acted fast, everyone would have heard the radio broadcast and rushed straight to the capital. The Thaumaturge, hearing him complain, asks if he's done whining about using saving people as an excuse to boost soldier morale. He points out that Thaumaturges always do the dirty work while everyone else enjoys the benefits. Just as he's about to leave, Isaac stops him and asks him to keep the presence of the 2 prisoners a secret. After all, Starlia had already decided to execute the self-proclaimed Thaumaturge, but that changed once the other man showed up, someone abnormally strong who beat Garm without even trying. Isaac believes these 2 are too much for them to handle, and he doesn't want to cause panic among the troops. Just then, a group of soldiers interrupts them, asking if it's true that Garm lost. Isaac, confused, hears them say Garm told him himself after they found him crying in the hallway about the defeat. Isaac scolds Garm for spending all this time crying, though deep down, he understands how devastating it must be to lose to some random kid. Back in another scene, we find Starlia completely alone, lost in thought, clearly thinking about Ragna. Suddenly, Nazarena storms in and smacks her, pointing out that she's clearly distracted. She then tells her that the reason she's acting like this is because she's fallen for the protagonist. Starlia gets angry, but Nazarena isn't letting it go. She hits her again and threatens to keep doing it until she admits her feelings. Starlia finally confesses that she does find him attractive. Then she starts crying, ashamed that she's being so shallow. Nazarena tries to comfort her, saying that falling in love, even if it starts with looks, isn't a bad thing. She reminds her how important she is as the leader of the Argentum Corps. There are a lot of powerful people who support her, but none of them can truly replace her. That's why Nazarena warns her not to lose sight of her responsibilities just because she caught feelings. She is the hope of everyone in this place. Hearing that, Starlia fires a shot and complains that she's being crushed under the weight of this duty, and no one seems to care how she feels. But Nazarena tells her that there are some people whose light only grows stronger the heavier their burden gets. That makes something click inside Starlia. She wipes her tears and decides that she's going to be one of those people. In the next scene, Starlia asks Christopher and Shin to give their report. They inform the princess that the dragons have been acting strangely. Up until this morning, there had been no activity from them, so the scouts got unusually close. But even then, there were no signs that the dragons were preparing to attack, even if provoked. Hearing this, the other subordinates back it up, saying they witnessed the same thing. It felt more like the dragons were gathering for a funeral than a battle. This leaves Starlia wondering what's really going on with the higher-ranking dragons. As she starts to suspect Crimson might not have told the full truth, she tells her squad that this might actually be a good opportunity. Even though they don't understand why the dragons are acting like this, it's obvious that they're not planning to let them go freely. However, since the siege hasn't been lifted, something else must have come up. Something even more urgent. She admits it's insulting, but she's grateful for the opening. so she turns to Majorca and asks how long it will take to finish the teleportation circle. Majorca replies that according to Fu, if he works himself to the bone, it could be done in a day. Realistically, it would take 2, but the princess insists they finish it within a single day, and no one is allowed to die in the process. She then tells everyone that the country is already lost. On the first night alone, 5 cities and the capital fell. So all that's left to do now is flee the nation with the 1,500 citizens they've managed to gather. Even though it's humiliating, she believes they must show the dragons that they won't get away with everything. Suddenly, Crimson and Ragna interrupt the meeting. Crimson sarcastically congratulates them for the elegant excuse they come up with to run away from the country. The moment Ragna steps in, Starlia's entire demeanor changes, and everyone notices. Christopher and Shin, clearly irritated, ask Ragna what he did to their commander, but he just stares back silently, confused by the accusation. Isaac steps in and tells them all to calm down. As Ragna looks around, he's struck by how strong everyone in Starlia's group seems. Meanwhile, Isaac asks what happened to the guards. Crimson answers that they simply asked to pass and were allowed through. Then he reveals that they want to help with the evacuation plan. He says he understands what Starlia is trying to do and believes it's the best course of action. However, he also points out that there's a huge gap between their military strength and that of the dragons. So if they agree to cooperate, he'll share crucial intel on the enemy. On top of that, Crimson offers a powerful weapon capable of killing superior dragons without help. That weapon, he says, is Ragna the Reaper. Therefore, they should team up to defeat their common enemy. If they don't, everyone here will die, plain and simple. His words spark a heated discussion among the princess's group. Then, Nazarena slaps Starlia, snapping her back to reality. Annoyed, Starlia fires back at Crimson, saying that everything he's saying is nonsense, and there's no way they'll work together. She accuses him of using people like weapons and then letting them die. As Shin grows anxious, wondering if the princess is about to order the prisoner's execution, Ragna steps in and cuts the tension. Starlia, visibly flustered, refuses to work with him either and orders them back to their cells. Sensing that he's losing ground, Crimson changes tactics and begins sharing intel about Ulto Zora. Isaac and the rest of the group are shocked. They've never heard such detailed information about the upper dragons, but Starlia challenges him, asking how they're supposed to know if any of it is true. Crimson calmly says that if he were lying, she would have already sensed it, which only makes her angrier. She says his entire existence is suspicious, and that's exactly why she can't trust a word he says. Realizing he won't convince her, Crimson turns to Ragna and pushes him to be the one who changes her mind. Ragna hesitates, unsure if he can really sway her. Crimson assures him that whatever he says, Starlia will fall in love with his words. Still, seeing that Ragna remains uncertain, he reminds him that staying here and choosing to fight comes with responsibility. Ragna remembers what Crimson told him earlier, that soon, at least 10,000 dragons will descend on this base. Among them is likely the 13th seat, led by 2 superior dragons. If Ragna truly wants to protect everyone here, Crimson proposes a deal. He must obey every one of his commands, and most importantly, he needs to forget about Ultimacia for a while so they can focus on escaping the country. If he agrees to that, Crimson swears to use every ounce of his power to ensure the humans in this base survive. After thinking over everything Crimson said, Ragna finally speaks to the princess, agreeing that she has every reason to distrust Crimson. This catches her attention, but she listens even more closely when he asks her to place her trust in Crimson anyway. He admits that Crimson may not be a good person, but he does trust his desire to kill dragons. That's the one thing they both care about. He explains to Starlia that's the reason they teamed up. They've made it their goal to wipe out the entire dragon race together. Then he confidently declares that hunting dragons is his specialty, and that he's the best in the world at it. He pleads with her to use him however she needs, because he knows he'll be a huge help. Hearing this, Starlia starts acting strangely, clearly struggling not to blurt out that she does want to use him. After holding it in for a moment to save face in front of her troops, she finally agrees, but only to work with Ragna, not Crimson. So Crimson tries stepping in to take over battle planning using his intel, but Starlia shuts that down immediately. She says he can share information, but the actual planning is her job. Then she asks why the dragons outside suddenly changed behavior a few hours ago. Crimson replies that something happened after their battle with the winged monarch back in the capital. He suspects that might have thrown them into a frenzy, which is why they're now rushing madly toward the capital. Meanwhile, in another part of the story, we see Ulto Zora furiously attacking Borgias. Terratectra shows up and asks where Ultimacia is, and Borgias says she's in her room. Inside, Ultimacia is seen crying. She's lost her grip on time magic and feels completely helpless. Old Kamui shows up uninvited. She immediately scolds him, furious that he came in after she told Nebulim not to let anyone near her. She assumes he forced his way in and tells him to get out. but instead he walks up and tosses down the severed head of Michael, the assassin she sent to find the person who killed Desus Troa. Ultimacia doesn't look pleased. She had expected something more significant. So Woltekomi mocks the idea that a low-level hunter could have killed Desus Troa, saying the man was just a loudmouth. Then he burns the hunter's head and presents something else, the Silverina sword he was carrying. The moment she sees it, Ultimacia instantly remembers Ragna and backs away in fear. She demands that Woltekomi take it away, but he deliberately teases her with it, which pushes her over the edge. In a burst of panic and rage, she slices him clean in half with the Silverina blade. Instead of getting angry, Woltekomi starts laughing. He tells her he knows why she can't control time anymore. It's not because God abandoned her or because she's a failure. The truth is simpler. She's lost confidence in her heart, and without that, magic can't function. He explains that magic needs three things: the raw power to create change, a clear process to direct it, and most importantly, the confidence to control the outcome once it happens. Ultimacia is shocked. Is he seriously saying her problem is psychological? But he presses harder, slowly getting her to open up and admit what she's really feeling. After hearing her struggles, he mocks her title, saying she's not the winged monarch anymore. She's more like Traumacia. Crushed by his words, Ultimacia falls to her knees and asks what she needs to do to regain control of her time magic. Woltekomi tells her it's simple. Let go of her fear, just like she did when she picked up the sword that terrified her. But as she tries, Ragna's face flashes in her mind. She admits it's not so easy to forget fear, so he offers a solution. Let him eliminate the source of her fear. Let him kill Ragna. She hesitates. The temptation is there, but she ultimately refuses. She says it wouldn't be right to use her strongest weapon just to recover from a personal failure. Besides, right now, their top priority is destroying this country and reshaping it in the image of God. Woltekomi doesn't let her off that easily. He tells her he's not looking for a textbook answer, he wants the truth. He demands that she say what she really wants. Suddenly, he charges at her, shouting that he's furious someone dared to threaten his woman. Stunned by his words, she lashes out and hits him with the sword, demanding to know when she ever became his woman. She's furious that he keeps making a fool out of her. As she beats him, she tells him that if he wants to fight for her, then fight. Woltekomi says that's exactly what he always does, but he won't bow or grovel just because she's the progenitor. He sees her as a messed up woman, not some divine being. Still, he follows her willingly, out of his own devotion, not because of God or blood. Finally, he admits that he's willing to put up with anything, as long as it means staying by her side. Ultimacia, overwhelmed, says she shouldn't be allowed to feel this way. She has a sacred duty to God and to everyone who died for her cause. But Woltekomi gently cups her face and once again pushes her to be honest about what she really wants. Through her tears, she finally says it. She wants him to bring her the heads of her enemies. Hearing this, Woltekomi embraces her. Then, with a single strike, he destroys the Silverina sword. He promises her he'll make her wish come true. The winged monarch, now feeling reinvigorated, wipes her tears and steps out of her room. Meanwhile, Ulto Zora and Terratectra are thrilled to see her looking like her old self again. After that, Ragna begins fusing Silverina into one of the princess's weapons while she and her group watch closely. When he finishes, Starlia tells Isaac to try destroying the sword using the one she crafted especially for him. He gives it a try, but everyone is shocked to see that he only manages to leave a small scratch. Crimson, clearly pleased, tells them what they just saw is only a tiny glimpse of the power hidden inside Ragna. Meanwhile, Ragna explains that the more the weapons are used, the more the Silverina begins to diminish. He also tells Starlia that Silverina's power will gradually wear down the weapon it's fused with. However, since her swords are extremely well made, she shouldn't need to worry. Still, Starlia admits that she does worry because those weapons are her creations. Then she compliments the quality of Ragna's Silverina. After that, she gives the order for all weapons to be brought to him so they can be infused with his Silverina as well. In the next scene, Ragna faces off against Starlia's soldiers. They all try to take him down, but not a single one can land a hit. While fighting, Ragna uses the chance to infuse Silverina into each soldier's sword as he defeats them. However, he starts wondering if this is a good idea, remembering that Crimson told him to save at least half of his Silverina for personal use. Crimson also warned him not to use Silverina battle arts in the upcoming fight because it wouldn't end well. Ragna understands that he's not at full strength, but he still believes it would be better to fight solo. He then questions why all these people are attacking him so relentlessly. If he did something to upset them, he wishes he could apologize, but he honestly doesn't know what happened. Realizing everyone's staring at him, he starts to feel overwhelmed and wishes he could just go back to his cell. Suddenly, Shin steps up, ready to fight since he's the chief swordsman. But Shin is shocked when Ragna easily defeats him. Watching him lie on the ground, Ragna notes that he's definitely strong, maybe even stronger than Leo. Shin, feeling humiliated, storms off in tears, shouting that he doesn't need Ragna's pity. The scene shifts to Christopher, who starts laughing at the sight of the swordsman crying after losing. Shin angrily yells at him to shut up and tells him to hurry up and get defeated too. Christopher calmly reveals that he already lost. This frustrates Shin even more, and he demands to know why Christopher is so happy about it. Christopher explains that, as a warrior, he's thrilled to receive a weapon of such immense power. That's what makes him happy. Shin still doesn't agree, but Christopher says he gets why he's frustrated. It's tough seeing someone so young be that powerful. Then he adds that it's even harder knowing Ragna might already be stronger than their commander just from sheer talent. That's when Garm jumps in and says that's not how it is. When he fought Ragna, he could tell the strength didn't come from talent. It was the result of a long, grueling journey by someone who had no talent at all. Christopher asks if that means Ragna is actually older than he looks, but Garm says he's not sure. What he is sure about is the painful truth that he himself had slacked off on training in his youth, and now he's paying the price. Determined, Shin stands back up and says he'll challenge Ragna as many times as it takes until he wins. He refuses to be just another nameless extra behind the hero on the battlefield. In the next scene, both Greya and Hesela ask Ragna what he thinks about the princess. Just as he defeats Shin again, he says he honestly doesn't know. He only just met her. Still, since they keep asking, Ragna admits he's confused about how Starlia can think he's attractive when his face is completely wrapped in bandages. Worried, he confesses he's scared she's only imagining he's handsome when he's probably not. The twins burst out laughing at how honest he's being. Then they show him their weapons because they want him to infuse Silverina into their bullets. Hearing them talk reminds Ragna of Leo. But before anything else happens, Slime suddenly pops up, prompting Ragna to scold him for showing himself when he's supposed to stay hidden. Greya and Hesela, however, get excited when they see him. They mistake him for a gnome and ask what his name is. Slime laughs at them for looking like dragons, and the girls immediately shift their tone. They then tell him they're going to feed him some dragon meat, which he gladly accepts. Watching them leave, Ragna can't shake the weird feeling that Slime will never be the same again. Next, we see the girls taking Slime to a dark room. There, they share that they don't know who their parents are. Their earliest memories are from a freak show circus, and after all the pain they went through, they've lost the ability to feel. However, they say they've decided to force those feelings back. After hearing Slime insult them, they've chosen to get angry. That's why they're about to torture him. Meanwhile, in another part of the base, the thaumaturge is quietly reflecting on the nature of magic. While conjuring fire in his hands, he practices different ways to control and manipulate it. He knows that the superior dragons are the true masters of magic because their blood is a direct manifestation of magical power. Just by imagining the change they want to make, they can cast powerful spells, which is what makes them so overwhelmingly strong. Because of that, he explains that thaumaturgy is essentially the art of imitating dragons. After reviewing all his knowledge, he gets frustrated when the teleportation circle still doesn't work. He and his team try to figure out what's going wrong, but they're all too exhausted to make progress. With very little time left before the circle must be completed, he realizes he needs new ideas, or else Starlia might purge him. As Fu thinks about that possibility, he wonders if he should just escape on his own tonight. However, he's suddenly interrupted by Crimson, who surprises him by saying he's come to help. In the next scene, Ultavzora and Terratectra return to the place where Ultimacia stripped away their humanity. Ultavzora tries to recall something from his former life, but he's frustrated because even coming to this location hasn't helped him remember anything. He asks Terratectra if he feels anything different. Terratectra replies that the only thing that hasn't changed is that they're still warriors. As comrades in arms, he vows never to let their lord suffer humiliation again. Terratectra says it doesn't matter even if it was the dragon monarch herself who took their lord's life. Then we see them regrouping with the others, and Ultavzora announces that they have two objectives. The first is to destroy the country, and the second is to kill the Reaper and his allies for harming the monarch. Ultkamui tells them not to worry about the Reaper or his group since they're now his prey. Ultavzora asks if he's really dumb enough to repeat the same mistake again, since clearly the Reaper struck when he wasn't around. He reminds Ultkamui that if Ultimacia is killed just once, now that she's lost her time magic, everything will be over. So Ultavzora commands him to act as the monarch's personal guard. Ultkamui refuses to take orders and says he's only doing this because Ultimacia asked him to bring her their enemies' heads. Ultavzora turns to Ultimacia and asks if that's true. She admits it is, but says she wishes she hadn't asked for it. She apologizes, saying she was swept up in her emotions. Ultkamui complains that she changed her mind too quickly and tries to embarrass her by bringing up the heated moment they shared. Suddenly, Nebulum steps in, saying they don't need to hunt for their enemies, because their enemies will come to them. Ultavzora asks how he knows that, and Nebulum answers that it's just a feeling he had on the battlefield. He explains that since they want to kill the Reaper, then their enemies surely want to kill Ultimacia, and that must not be allowed to happen. Because of this, Ultazora decides that he and Woltakami will stay behind to protect the monarch's life. Ultimacia objects, pointing out that if they do that, there will be no one left to destroy the country. Hearing this, Ultazora volunteers to take on that mission himself. Since they've already suffered setbacks, Ultimacia agrees and gives him full responsibility for wiping out the humans. So Ultazora asks her to issue a command for the 40,000 dragons to devour every last human. However, he says they'll need to be led by a medieval-class dragon while he and Terratectra deal with the Princess of Silver. Then he assigns Borgias to lead the dragons into battle, but he also warns him that his task isn't just to kill humans, he must also track down the Reaper and his companions. Hearing this, Woltakami reminds Ultazora that he might be forgetting something important. The possibility that the Reaper is now working with the Argentum Corps. Ultazora replies that if that's true, then he'll simply summon him and expects him to show up right away. Finally, Terratectra tells everyone not to die, because if even one of them falls, it'll be as good as defeat. In the next scene, the princess activates her signature barrier art, something she calls the Princess Cage. Starlia explains to her subordinates that it's a Silverina cage, layered over and over, which should severely restrict the dragon's movement. Isaac then asks her what she thinks about what Crimson said regarding the battle with the Dragon Monarch, since he didn't believe a word of it. The princess tells him to stop being so naive because Crimson's words are a mix of truth and lies. That's why she advises him to ignore any information that isn't absolutely essential. Still, Isaac brings up something Crimson revealed that seemed important. He said that the superior dragons were once human. Hearing that, the princess admits it's probably true since she had been suspecting the same thing. She says people born with high levels of magical power often show non-human traits. Isaac gets uneasy, realizing that maybe this whole war isn't dragons versus humans, but actually humans versus humans. Starlia tells him not to dwell on that because even if they were human once, it doesn't change the fact that they still have to kill them. The scene shifts to Ragna, who suddenly experiences a vision that catches him off guard. Then he notices Crimson has been watching him, although he chose not to wake him up. Ragna asks what he's been doing, and Crimson tells him he's been training the thaumaturges here, who can now at least form a basic magic circle, though there's still a long way to go. But then Crimson admits that isn't his main concern. What matters now is answering Ragna's questions. He guesses that Ragna's probably wondering why he stopped him from using Silverina's battle arts. Since Ragna confirms that's exactly what he's been thinking, Crimson first asks him something else. Does he believe he can take down Woltakami? Ragna, being honest, says no, which actually makes Crimson happy since he's not being stubborn. Crimson then explains that even among dragons, Woltakami is different. He's like Ragna, someone who's pushed past the limits of power. That's why Crimson warns him not to face him head-on, especially while Ragna isn't at full strength. He goes on to say that's the real reason he forbade the use of Silverina's battle arts. Crimson also didn't want anyone realizing that Ragna has Silverina flowing through his body. Still, now that certain factions know no mid-tier superior dragon can handle Ragna, Woltakami will likely show up. Crimson suspects that Woltakami might stick close to Ultimacia now, after nearly losing her when he wasn't around. However, if Ultazora finds out that Ragna is here, he might summon Woltakami to this place. And if that happens, Crimson warns, it's game over because there's no way they can win against someone that fast and powerful. After hearing all this, Ragna just wants to save as many people as he can. Elsewhere, Isaac is fuming because his prisoner has somehow left her cell again. Then he runs into Fu, who looks exhausted and asks who that woman actually is. Isaac gets nervous, but Fu explains, looking defeated, that thanks to her, the magic circle has improved a lot. Isaac wonders why that's a bad thing, and Fu tells him that he just doesn't get how humiliating this is for him. Back with Crimson and Ragna, Crimson returns and questions why he's gone back to his cell. Ragna says it's the only place where he can actually relax, then asks what she's been up to. Crimson answers that she had things to do, then immediately checks whether he kept half of his Silverina like she asked. Since he confirms that he did, she now tells him to infuse all that power into a single weapon that he will use for the next battle. She recommends he choose one of the swords crafted by the princess and then bury himself underground once it's done. Crimson adds that the battle will most likely begin around sunset. Just as she's about to walk off, Starlia arrives and questions where exactly she plans to go. Crimson tells her she was thinking of taking a nap, since there's nothing else interesting happening. Starlia asks if she had anything to do with why everyone's suddenly calmed down. Crimson responds that she has no idea what she's talking about, then flips the question back at her. Did she really come all this way just to ask that? The princess gets annoyed by Crimson's question and, instead of answering, turns to Ragna and tells him she wants to speak with him alone. She then leads him into a tunnel. where she offers him one of her personally crafted weapons. However, before he picks one, she says there's something she needs to tell him. She shares that after the war, even if everything goes perfectly and they manage to escape the country, she wants to stay with the Solarians. Still, she admits she's worried about how they're going to feed 1,000 people in a foreign land. That's why she has decided to join the Solar Church and become a Dragon Scourge. In exchange, he hopes her people will be granted protection, since the Solarians are the only ones reckless enough to provoke the winged bloodline. Ragna asks if she's met the Solarians before, and she tells him they once offered her sanctuary. Back then, she turned them down because their offer rubbed her the wrong way, but now things are different. This time, it's not about preference. Even so, all of this depends on her surviving the battle, because if she dies, her people have no future. As a backup plan, she wants to ask Ragna to become a Dragon Scourge in her place if she doesn't make it. Despite her willingness to do anything he asks, Ragna tells her it's impossible since he's not a fan of that religion. Instead, he flips the plan and says she will have to become his Dragon Scourge. Starly reminds him that she may not be alive to do that, but Ragna asks why she's so convinced she's going to die. She says she's always trusted her intuition over logic, and ever since this war started, she's had a strong premonition that she's destined to die. Still, not wanting to look weak in front of him, she claims it's just normal for a leader to prepare for their own death. After saying that, she gets an idea and hands the weapons back to Ragna, reminding him that he's her subordinate. Although he's the man she loves, she knows she has to act this way to show her true nature. Watching her assert control, Ragna thinks she's an incredible woman. Unlike him, she's planning her own death while charging into battle, which shows how much more capable she is. He's amazed by her strong will and thinks it shines bright. It reminds him of Leo, which makes him realize he always wanted people like her to survive, even if it meant he wouldn't. Then Ragna uses the last of his Silverina to coat the sword she gave him and tells her that he won't let her die. He says she has to be the one to become a Dragon Scourge. After that, he tells her not even superior dragons with a whole army will stand a chance against her because they'll all fall before her blades. Overwhelmed, the princess panics and quickly runs off. She finds Nazarena and nearly in tears says she can't believe how hard Ragna is trying. If he really is giving his all, then her swords don't deserve him. Angry and frustrated, she swears to Nazarena that she won't let herself be humiliated by him. From now on, she's going to push herself even further. Starlia says she'll forge better weapons and won't allow herself to die in this battle either. The scene shifts, and we see dragons flying out of the royal palace. Civilians are shocked and try to seek help from the soldiers, but the troops start shooting instead, possessed by Ultozora, who clearly takes joy in spreading chaos. After wiping out the crowd, Borgias the verdant sea dragon starts regenerating his body. Watching this, Ultimacia remembers how he asked for human blood from the capital to fulfill his duty. He also begged her to let Nebulum lead the beasts, saying it would be a great chance for him to gain experience. Hearing that, Zora questioned if he was being serious, and Borgias confirmed he was. He said it didn't matter anyway, since he didn't have much time left. That's why he wants to fight the powerful enemies who are after their progenitor. Ultimacia doesn't seem fully convinced, so he tells her he's been through too much while holding on to one single wish. Thanks to Ultimacia, Borgias' final wish finally comes true. The scene shifts, and the monarch quietly laments the fact that even Borgias is probably about to leave her. Suddenly, Woltakami interrupts her thoughts, saying that Borgias can do whatever he wants, because it won't be a problem. Meanwhile, the sun begins to set, and Starlia's forces stand at the ready, full of tension, waiting to see what comes next. As the night passes into dawn, Ultozora finally appears on the battlefield and apologizes for showing up late. Without wasting time, he gives the signal for the attack to begin, starting by blowing apart one of the defensive barriers. Watching closely, the princess tells Nazarena that she feels an immense power approaching. She thinks the base should hold out until suddenly she sees a massive force descending from the sky. Seeing this, Starlia realizes that if she doesn't act fast, they could destroy the entire base. However, a moment later, we switch back to Ultozora, who's annoyed that his aerial assault failed to hit the mark. He asks Terratectra what went wrong, and Terratectra explains that their attack was neutralized before it could even reach the tower. Hearing that, Ultozora grows uneasy and says that would only be possible if the Reaper himself were here in dragon form. Yet Terratectra reassures him it wasn't the Reaper. Instead, the attack was stopped by a warrior wielding swords made of Silverina. That makes Zora scowl, saying he hates the idea of summoning Ultakami, but if the Reaper really is present, they may have no choice. Terratectra stays calm and tells him that won't be necessary because he understands his own strength well enough. Then he turns to the mysterious warrior and asks in his name. However, the protagonist doesn't respond. That silence makes the dragon grin, and he says that if the guy isn't going to talk, then they may as well speak with their blades.